on what these tariffs mean for the global economy, its implications for the African continent, and what Ghana ought to do to hedge itself against a very serious period of uncertainty. The program is divided into 3 parts. In the first part, we're going to have a presentation by our keynote speaker, who's a management consultant and policy expert. That will be followed by a panel discussion involving some of the best minds in the trade and investment world. We have here at Alisa Hotel in person close to 100 industry people who will bring their perspectives to bear on a very important subject. Our goal is to get clarity on what Ghana should be prioritizing in this very uncertain period for the global economy. If you're listening to us on radio, 97.3 CDFM, or television channel 1, please get in touch with your questions or comments. If you're watching on television, there's a number that will be put on the stream where you can comment. If you're watching online as well, feel free to add your comments to the stream. If you're listening on radio, you can send us a comment on your regular WhatsApp number. Once again, we'd like to say a big thank you to our guests for being here for the program. Please put your hands together for yourselves one more time. We'd like to jump straight into action by inviting our keynote presenter. I'll just say a few things about him. We've worked with him at Citi for over a decade. He's one of the best minds we've had, done work on exports, done work on Afro champions. He is a management consultant with close to 2 decades of experience in the field and done very important work for large organizations like the World Bank, the IFC, the African Development Bank, EcoBank Transnational, ABSA, Standard Chartered, and Afri-Exim Bank. He is currently the managing partner at international advisory firm Confidence, where he oversees the work of a network of over 60+ Africa region-focused consultants. So, to set the scene for the topic, the global tariff disputes, navigating Ghana's economic recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome my dear friend and brother, Michael Kuto. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you, Bernard. Always very kind introduction. Good morning. I enjoyed the breakfast. I hope all of you have enjoyed the breakfast as well. We are navigating recovery. I think it's good to navigate with some good breakfast. It's a good sign. So, what I'll do this morning, the real discussion will happen, as Bernard said, when the panel and the open forum happens. So, I'm going to try to do a theme setting. And obviously, I can't cover all the issues, because if I try to cover all the issues, then this forum is pointless. If you look at the theme, global tariff disputes, the sub-theme is what we really care about. But the tariff issue is the backdrop. So I'm going to focus much of my presentation on the tariff issues so that the panel and the open forum can discuss how we navigate Ghana's recovery. And as you're all aware, these two guys have been at each other's throat. Or, to put it quickly, has been at the other's throat. It actually started with 2018, if you remember, during transfer stem. That's when the tariff tit for tat actually started. It started, on specific products, specific sectors. There was some tit for tat between the EU and the US, between the US and Mexico and Canada and then China. This has been going on. But what was unleashed in April, which Trump tagged US Liberation Day, was literally unheard of. It was actually a tariff apocalypse because it was really just going to mess up everything. Since then, we know that there's been efforts to try and pull back, contain, and all of that. Ghana had its own share of the tariffs, but we know that it's a complicated global issue. So with everything that has happened since that time, yesterday, Trump claimed that he reached an agreement with China. There's still a lot of uncertainty what the details of that is. In Africa, we had a lot of discussion about how this is going to affect different countries. Lesotho had a really, really, really big hit. South Africa has been under pressure. President Cyril Ramaphosa has had to go to the White House. It's a complicated issue. I know that in Ghana, I think either the foreign minister and the trade minister summoned the American ambassador. So, everybody sort of has had concerns. But what does this really mean for us as we try to navigate our recovery as a country? Where does Ghana stand? I'll look at how the situation could hit us directly and how it could hit us indirectly. So the analysis will look at direct effects and indirect effects. Now, direct effects. Really, what is the real exposure for Ghana? If you look at our top 10 exports to the US, this is for 2023. Total export was 1.7 billion USD. A year before, in 2022, was about $2.8 billion. So we suffered a 1 billion drop in our exports to the US between 22 and 23. But I suspect a lot of that is in crude, oil prices and output. So if you look at our exports to the US, 70% of the value is in crude petroleum. 70%. The rest of the 30% is in everything else, including non-traditional exports. So, in terms of direct effect, we may potentially suffer some effect. It's not clear whether the 15% tariff that was imposed is actually in effect yet, but technically, in principle, if that were to apply, there will be some effect on these products that we export to the US. Now, some of these products fall under AGOA. Versus some of our rivals. And that's because Ghana, if you look at the tariff that was applied, the 15%, is the lowest. It's one of the lowest compared to some other countries that were hit with higher tariffs. So if we are competing with some of these countries in the US market, our products are going to be potentially cheaper. It doesn't mean that it'll be cheaper, because there are several other factors that go into your export competitiveness. How competitive your cost of production is, your logistics and your cost of reaching in the market. There's many more things that go into it, so it's not automatic. But there is the potential that we could be more competitive relative to some of our rivals in the US market. Now, again, if we really, really wanted to take the US market seriously, this is why as a country we need to start thinking strategically. What are these product lines? Who are the competitors? And how do we actually take advantage of this? I'm not sure whether we're thinking through these yet, but this potential is there. So overall, in terms of the direct hit, would say that it's not really much. There is actually some silver lining if we can take advantage of it. Now, what about the indirect? A lot of the indirect effects will go through ripples through our value chains. So one way to think about it is that Ghana supplies raw materials to manufacturers who may sell goods to the US, right? And if these countries lose US market share as a result of the tariffs, then there could be a potential knock-on effect for these customers that buy our inputs and our raw materials to manufacture and sell to these US markets that have lost market shares in. Now, if you look at this chart, it tells you our top 10 export destinations and the tariffs that have been imposed on them. So this is an attempt to proxy what this could look like. If you look at the countries where we export a lot of our products to, and most of our products to these countries are raw products. They are raw materials. A lot of them are raw materials. So if these countries have high exposures to the US market and they have had to lose market share in the US, potentially they could reduce the quantity of raw materials they buy from us. Now, we haven't done any rigorous modeling to try to determine what this actually will look like. So again, these are very high level attempt to look at what the numbers could look like. So if you look at our top export destinations, and if you look at the tariffs that the US applied on them, they are quite high. 31% on Switzerland, 26% on India, 30% on South Africa. We know China was escalated to 125 until they decided to de-escalate and are still trying to come to some sort of truce. Canada, 25% is one of our top export destinations. And Italy, so they are pretty high, right? We don't know yet, but these are all areas to think about how the effect could play out. Now, as an import-dependent economy, you could say that we risk potentially some sort of imported inflation if the tariff really messes up, supply chains and prices go up. So, but this imported inflation is not going to be a generalized inflation. It's going to be restricted to certain specific sectors and products that may have high exposure, to certain supply chains that may be adversely impacted, such that the cost of these imports, go up. So again, here you look at our top import origins, right? And we try and look at what the tariffs that the US applied on them look like. Overall, with the exception of China, 34, again, that went up to 125. The Netherlands, 20%. Russia, 20%. Now, there's a caveat here because we know that a lot of the input sourcing that goes into global, manufacturing is sourced much more widely from multiple sources, right? A lot of manufacturers now source diverse components from multiple locations. So it's not really the case that if any of these countries happens to be our top import origin and the tariffs cause an increase in the cost of production, it would necessarily impact us. So here, the assumption is that the effects may be muted and it's not necessarily going to be that much. Even if it happens, it will be restricted to specific product groups. Now, another way to think about this is to look at the macro cross-currents on our recovery. So we know what's been happening to the price of gold when there's a lot of uncertainty in the global economy. Gold is a product that investors buy into when there's a lot of uncertainty. So there's a lot of flight to safety into gold assets. So gold prices are doing well, and we export a lot of gold. And Trump's tariffs and all the tariff uncertainty is creating a lot of uncertainty. So this is one way in which this works well for us because we export a lot of gold. But we also know that all this disturbance to the global economy could result in a slowdown, even if not a global recession or a recession in some particular specific economies. It could potentially lead to a global slowdown. I think the World Bank released a report this week or last week that projected that the tariffs could lead to the biggest slowdown in the global economy in decades. So the risk is there. When Elon Musk had his little big fight with Trump, even he tweeted that the US must be in a recession before the end of this year because of the tariffs. So the risk of a slowdown, even if not a recession, is real. So even though we might be benefiting from gold prices doing well because of all these disturbances, if a global slowdown happens, that's not good for us because we export a lot of raw materials, we export a lot of commodities. And we know that whenever there's a global slowdown, there's a drop in the demand for commodities. We saw that happen, in the past, 2008 financial crisis and all of that. So this is one way in which it works in the reverse. Now, one of the things Trump has been promising to do is to unleash a comeback for American shale oil. So he calls it unleashing America's liquid gold. We know the last time shale really took on the global oil market, prices really crashed. Oil prices really crashed. I think this must have been around 2014, 2015. Prices really dropped all the way down. I think $30. Some went in the 20s before it came back. So this is something Ghana needs to watch. If this happens, it could have an impact on our oil, our crude oil export earnings. And mind you, 70% of all our exports into the US is crude petroleum. So if shale makes a comeback in the US, we could take a hit because shale will be significantly cheaper in the US. We would have to find new markets for our oil. So that's something to watch. This is an attempt to think through a few of these macros and to try to see what the potential effects or the risk outlook could look like. So if you take gold prices likely to rise, with all the uncertainty coming from the tariffs, in terms of our recovery, what does that mean for our public debt? What does that mean for our, economic growth? What does that mean for the deficit? What does that mean for inflation? What does that mean for the exchange rate? Our view at Confidence is that this one is a potential positive for all the macro variables that you see up there. If gold prices do well and we earn a lot more from gold, we accumulate more foreign exchange. We potentially could, do better with repaying our debt. It's a boost for our economic growth. It's good for the deficit. Since we're able to build up our reserves, and we know that a lot of our inflation comes through the exchange rate, it's also good for inflation potentially. So that's one way to think about it. But what about the risks of a global slowdown? What would that mean for our public debt? What would that mean for our GDP growth? What would that mean for the deficit and inflation and exchange rate? I've left these ones open. I think it's one of the things we could discuss during the panel and during the open forum, because I'm curious to know what you all think about, what a potential effect could look like. In terms of, if there's a surge in U.S. shale oil, again, what could the potential effects be? Because we know that there's a potential impact on our crude exports to the U.S. There's another one that I haven't put here, but which is very important, and that's remittances. Now, in the big, beautiful bill that, as they call it, Trump's big, beautiful bill that's in Congress now, there is a new levy that has been introduced, which is a 3.5% levy on remittances going out of the U.S. 3.5%. That's pretty high. It's higher than e-levy. And we know that we have a lot of our remittances coming from the U.S. So what's going to happen when this goes into effect? It was originally 5%, and they brought it down to 3.5%. Remittances, I think 2024 must have been about $6 billion in excess. We make more money from remittances than foreign direct investment as a country. So that's big. And it's not just remittances that, brings us a lot of forex. A lot of it also goes down to the household level. Pay school fees, household expenses, and all sorts of things. So a lot of households are very highly exposed to this. It's not just at the level of our forex reserves. So we need to pay attention to this. We haven't modeled what the potential effect of a 3.5% levy on remittances will be on the quantum of remittances that are coming from the US to Ghana. I don't know what it will be, but I think 3.5% is pretty high. So is it going to, make people send? Is it going to cause a drop in our remittances? And if that happens, that's very, very significant, potentially, a potential effect. Now, key takeaways before we go into the panel discussions. How do we tie all of this together? The first one is the tariff shock. Really, I mean, at Confidence, we think that it's more of a ripple than a wave for now, as far as the implications for our recovery is concerned. There might actually be a silver lining if we can decide to take advantage of it. So that's on the tariff side. Remember that I spoke about other shocks that could happen outside of the tariffs. But as far as the tariffs are concerned, as we have them now, we shouldn't worry too much. We could actually take advantage of it. So in terms of opportunities, we could seize U.S. niche advantages while rivals pay higher tariffs. So, that's something we need to be looking at. And additionally, Lesotho has been crying a lot. South Africa is complaining a lot. We could potentially, using the AfCFTA, attract some of that export, right? Lesotho could relocate some of those contracts to Ghana with the garments. We could expand our garment sector, through this. So these are potential advantages, but we need to be strategic and understand, which product lines, which value chains, which alliances and partnerships are required to take advantage of these. So there are opportunities, but we need to. And in terms of risk, as I did mention, there are potential risks to global value chains and commodity outings. We need to diversify our exports and our production from a resilience standpoint. That's very important. More than 50% of our exports are concentrated in 3 markets: UAE, India, Switzerland. So that's a pretty high concentration. Exposure is pretty high to just 3 countries. We need more diversification. We need both vertical and horizontal diversification. It's critical. We need to diversify the product lines within the sectors where we're doing well. We need to diversify into other sectors and value chains. In terms of risk, I think we need to keep monitoring aggressively. We need to invest in trade intelligence. We need to invest in global value chain mapping to anticipate shocks. I am not sure whether we'd really thought through all of this as a country and we have a game plan, but this is important. Now, before I go, this is my thought before we go into the panel discussions and the forum. Take a very, very good look at this map. In 2003, a smaller map in blue tells you what the case in Africa was in 2003 as far as the US and China's trade with the continent looked like in 2003. 2003, only 35% of African countries traded more with China than with the US. By 2023, every red is China. Every blue is the US. This is the current situation. 97% of the 54 countries in Africa do more trade with China than with the US. So, the US might be screaming and threatening, but the world has changed. This is the world in which we live. It's no longer America's world, as far as Africa's trade with the rest of the world is concerned. But, what does this mean for us as Africans, as Ghanaians? So in 2003, and I don't know if David Ofosudote is here. My big brother David likes to say that if you don't have a strategy, you will become a part of someone else's strategy. If you don't have a strategy, you are bound to be part of someone else's strategy. In 2003, most African countries were merely a part of America's strategy, as far as trade was concerned. In 2023, we are just merely a part of China's strategy. What is our strategy? We came up with the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA. We signed it, we ratified it. there's no action. There's no action. What is our strategy? This is nothing to celebrate. You might be an anti-American, and you might be pro-China. It's pointless. This means nothing if we don't have our own game plan. What is our strategy for engaging America? What is our strategy for engaging China? That's what matters. What's our strategy for trading amongst ourselves as Africans? Because the AFCFTA is our way out of all of these global trade arrangements that never benefit us. So in the short term, yes, we can analyze all of this. We can look at what the impact on our recovery is, and I think we'll have a robust discussion. But we need to look ahead. What do we really, really, really want to do as a country? To build resilience, to transform our economies. How do we do that as we navigate the recovery? So I will leave this here as my food for thought, our food for thought from Confidence. And I look forward to a robust panel discussion and an even more interesting open forum. Thank you very much.
Calling all farmers, agribusinesses, and innovators, this is your chance to shine. Channel One TV invites you to exhibit at Agri Fair 2025, one of Ghana's largest agriculture exhibitions. From Friday 20th to Sunday the 22nd of June, the A4 Sutherland Children's Park in Accra will come alive with the very best from Ghana's agribusiness sector. Are you a farmer with fresh produce of any kind? Be it crops, livestock or poultry, fisheries or aquaculture, or you're a supplier of agro inputs and processing machinery? This is your platform to connect with the world. Agri Fair 2025 is more than an exhibition. Showcase your fresh produce, share your expertise and experience, and grow your business. So, to all farmers with fresh produce, livestock or poultry, fisheries or aquaculture products, come, sell, network, and expand your business. Agri Fair 2025, where culture meets innovation. Register now to secure your spot.
The former minister of many things. So we use former minister of trade, but he's been former minister of communication, education, even mines at some point. Also was Ghana's ambassador to the US many years ago. One of Africa's foremost communication professionals, Dr. Ekospio Gaba. Let's put our hands together for him. Doc, thank you for being here. It's good to see you. We're also very happy to have the CEO of, I call them Africa's leading economic think tank, and nobody has challenged me for that. So I suspect that's correct. The Africa Center for Economic Transformation, ACET for short, Mavis Owusu Jemfi. Put your hands together for Mavis. They have a very unique approach to advising African countries, and I cannot forget your growth with depth. It's such a powerful tool for thinking about transformation on the continent. Mavis, thank you so much for that. We also have Emmanuel Mensah, who is head of trade and working capital for one of Africa's largest banks. As you know, Absa Bank is our key sponsor. Emmanuel Mensah is also on the panel. Round of applause for Emmanuel. And of course, Michael will be on the panel. We wanted to take a quick message from our sponsor before we jump into the panel. Is that ready now? If it's not, please, panel members, please come up stage. Indeed. We will leave a substantial amount of time for discussion because we have a lot of interesting people in the room. We have, as I said, the chair of one of the members of the Committee on Trade, who is also the MP for, this is very high, forgive me, this is the MP for Central Tone, Honorable Hotoji here. We also have the Vice President's Economic Advisor, Dr. Sharif Khalid, here with us as well. And then we have the Deputy General Secretary of the MPP, Haruna, here with us. We have a number of people from civil society, including CATS, the Borderless Alliance. We have GPRTU, Imoro, and the team from GPR2, give us a wave, GPR2 team. Thank you very much indeed. And other trade groups here with us as well. So all of them we would hear for as the program proceeds. So I'd like to cross over to my seat and then get straight into the panel discussion. We want to encourage you to send your comments if you're watching us on television on the number we have displayed on the screen. And if you're listening to us on radio, our phone number for the WhatsApp chat is 054-998-6996. So to structure the panel discussion, I want to group my questions into 4 so you can work with me. The first line of inquiry is opening thoughts on what is happening globally. Opening thoughts on what is happening globally. So by that I mean, how unprecedented is Mr. Trump's actions? Hello? And the reactions from other countries? How unexpected was it? What is the scale of it? So basically, I like first-time thoughts on those. Then the second round will be more about what risks do we face. I think Michael alluded to some of the risks, but I feel everybody will have their different angle to looking at it. What risks do we face? Then the third line of inquiry will be more to do with what opportunities does this present? Okay? What opportunities does this present? And then finally, what are the key takeaway action points? So that's the structure I have. Please, am I making sense so far? Is this making sense? All right. So what is the scale of what is going on? I read one post by an analyst that the economic effects of the Trumps could be as devastating as COVID-19 on the world economy. And I was like, whoa, this is quite big. I don't know. But that's what some people think. So I'm going to take opening thoughts. I'll start with Emmanuel. So you are a finance guy. You're a trade guy. You work one of the world's largest banks. How have you been monitoring what's happening from the U.S.? How seismic has the tariff policy implementation by Mr. Trump been in terms of your outlook? So let me see if your mic is working.
Thank you.
Yes, I think it is.
Thank you, Bernard, and good morning to everyone around the tables. So, Bernard, if you ask me, it's quite going to be varied in terms of how these geopolitical tensions when it comes to global trade and its impact on our economies, especially African economies, and particularly the economy of Ghana. The direct impact, as Michael indicated during his presentation, we might see it as quite minimal, but there are ripple effects that come to fore because of this. And I'll cite an example of what will happen if this tension continues to exist within these big players, where if the big players like China and the rest of Europe are being locked out of getting access to the European market, the swiftest and quickest intervention is to explore other markets, and they will turn their eyes on Africa. What will that mean for our production businesses in Ghana and on the African continent? What does that mean when it comes to direct investment into the continent? And I'll cite an example around the steel industry, where US is restricting importation of steel into their countries. What then will happen is that these China is the largest when it comes to steel manufacturing. They'll be exporting these into the African continent, and particularly Ghana. What does that mean for our steel industry? What does that mean for economic growth, impact on GDP, inflation, unemployment? So for me, I see this as a very big thing that we need to take a critical look at. But then, Bernard, my other point is we've seen such tensions in the past.
Okay.
As a country, I think we are too late, and maybe I'll say it's never late. We are too late in time in strategizing and trying to navigate this maze of geopolitics. And I like the point Michael indicated where he says we need to build trade intelligence. We have Ghana Statistical Service. What can they do? It's good to have a handle on your economic data points and do research and all that. But we should be taking keen interest in what is happening in other people's backyard. And that should guide us in navigating. I believe if we had these and is informing policy strategies, this wouldn't be much of a challenge for us. We are just caught in the web because we are really not prepared as a country
for
to
this.
navigate this.
Wonderful. Let me take the first time thought. Thank you, Emmanuel. Let me take the first time thoughts of Mavis on this from the perspective of how shocking and how seismic or seismic is this. Mavis, thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. So let me begin by saying, like everything that President Trump has done, it shouldn't be a surprise. This has been coming for a long time. All that Trump did in his second term is push us off the cliff. Okay? So trade wars, you know, we've been debating and discussing it for a long time. Our relationship with Europe as Africa has been shifting for a while. The difference is Europe did not push us off a cliff edge. When Trump came in his first term, most of the tariffs he put in place were kept by the Democrats. Okay, nothing changed. And so what tends to happen is in his second term, he decided, you know, this is too slow. And he's pushed everybody off a cliff edge, and we all seem surprised by it. So the first thing is, for me, Bernard, it's not a surprise. We've seen this coming. It's the time frame that seems to have shocked everybody. And the fact that it has been, let's move, let's stop, let's move, let's stop, let's move that, let's stop, tells you about the uncertainty and the lack of an analysis underpinning this and the amount of work. It's shocking the system for the system to respond, okay? So what I think for me really was devastating as an African as we watched this process was, as soon as Trump announced the first round of tariffs and everybody was shocked, the Asians got together and started strategizing and planning, okay? They didn't go one by one to see Trump. They didn't start negotiating with ambassadors at their nation states. They came together and said, as a sub-region, how do we respond to this issue? And came up with a game plan. Immediately, America realized that it had to take a different approach to how it engaged with Asia. Where is our common voice? And having said this, remember, ASEAN is not a bloc. It doesn't tout to be AU or AFCFTA or any of the things we are so proud about. It doesn't do it. It doesn't have a theoretical framework it's proud about. But it had a structure for implementation in a crisis. So my first question, the thing that disappointed me the most in all of this was Africa forgot why we set up the AFCFTA in the first place. Africa forgot the processes we have in place for the African Union. In fact, Africa even forgot we had the AFDB, because it wasn't until a week ago that I heard an AFDB position on the tariffs. We all started going one by one by one by one. So, and then the final point I wanted to make was, and then we are helter-skeltering again, including in our beloved Ghana, and saying, what is the impact going to be on us? What is the impact going to be on us? What is the impact going to be on us? I just want to leave you with one very quick statistic. We talk about diversification as if it's the most attractive thing on the planet Earth, and we do nothing about it, okay? In Africa, 14% of our trade is amongst ourselves, okay? But 40% of this trade is manufacturing, okay? So when we trade with ourselves, we trade on the thing that will deepen our economies, structurally transform our economies, and help us compete, okay? Asia does it without setting up an AFCFTA. And they compete with the world by working together And when they have a crisis, they come together and fix it. Okay? So we are busy panicking because of one country. And Mr. Koto, you were talking a lot about, the link between EU and Africa, it's EU and America, and who takes our raw material and adds value to it, etc., etc., etc. For me, that is a red herring. The Lobito corridor should be our priority right now. The Akosombo corridor. Bernard, can I digress for 1 second? Just 1 second.
Feel free.
We have a 25% decrease on our imports all of a sudden. Suddenly we're paying 25% less on our imports because of the CD appreciation. Okay? And we're talking about the Akosombo corridor. We know most of that stuff has to be imported in for us to build that industrial park that we want. Shouldn't this be the time when the business community and government should be sitting together to think through how we fast track that? So that we can start laying the foundation for trading with Africa and the rest of the world, instead of worrying about Trump's trade tariffs, which, to be honest, it's almost negligible on Ghana right now. If we are really honest, it's negligible on us.
So thank you, Mavis. A round of applause for Mavis. So I noticed that both you and Emmanuel are jumping straight into what ought to be done because you're in a hurry. But I'll still stick to my structure. I want to take opening thoughts from Dr. Spiogabra. Having done all the things you've done, how big is what's going on as a curveball or a black swan in the world? Doc, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues, friends. Subject matter and the questions actually sets me reflecting from which of many perspectives you would prefer my answer to come from. Because I would say, with due respect and for the sake of those who may be younger and probably don't know me that well, I must confess that amongst my relevance to the subject is that I may be the only one here who has been an ambassador to the United States before. I may be wrong, but that's what I can see from the crowd. And therefore, the question about Trump and his behavior in the United States, when posed to me from my diplomatic experience, will get a certain kind of answer. And that answer is that Trump, as a human being, is very much a very unpredictable person. And so much as we may be trying to analyze his decisions from a trade policy point of view, actually psychoanalysts may help us better in helping to uncover the likely actions of a man. May have a very good friend called Elon Musk only 4 or 5 months ago, and all of a sudden he's in a kind of a divorce dispute with a so-called best friend. So that gives you a certain perspective.
Okay.
I'm saying that I'm also in a certain fix because the role I have played include the fact that I was the last Minister of Trade and Industry of the NDC government, and I had the responsibility of putting up the now well-known 12-story building called the Africa Trade House when I was Minister of Trade and Industry. The word industry often gets missed when you say Minister of Trade. And the industry part is really the most important part, at least from my perspective. Now we're talking about trade issues, but the trade without the industry really does not make much sense. That's why the extent to which we are a manufacturing nation, as you just said, 40% of our exports may be at the manufactured side, is critical. So how we respond to it, if that's not a question you're asking now, but which I'll come to later, it's important to understand the structure of our economy and our export-import regime. Now, I think most of us now know that Ghana imports about $17 billion per year and also exports about $17 billion. So for last year, I think our trade balance was only about $500 million in the negative side. which is not bad. It's really balanced in terms of our imports and exports. But of course, we would want to be an export-driven economy, so that we actually would wish exports can overtake our imports by 20-30%. That's going forward. Now, if we also, I heard mention of the African Development Bank, which has only issued a recent report. I was in Abidjan just 2 weeks ago for the African Development Bank annual meeting. So I must also confess that I was also a former director level officer of the African Development Bank. But I was also a member of the team, 15 people who helped to create the African Export-Import Bank, which is based in Cairo.
AfriExim.
So the discussion actually, the AfriExim is a more relevant institution for this discussion than African Development Bank, which is more long-term funding, finance, and development issues. So if African Export-Import Bank has not yet issued a statement on this, that's the one that will worry me most. By the end of the day, the issue is how should Ghana respond to these gyrations from the American side? And I think the advice of my good friend, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, who is now the Director General of the World Trade Organization, actually is, I guess, the most appropriate, that countries should relax and observe and monitor what is happening. Because, as I said, psychoanalysis, the man can start tomorrow and say, okay, all tariffs have been removed, but only Ghana will take 50% of Ghana. You can do that tomorrow, either by Twitter or by X or by whatever. And that's the policy for 5 minutes, or for 20 minutes, or 2 hours. And then the next week can be something else. So the situation is so unpredictable. The unpredictability of the policy framework of the United States is what I would like to refer to, but also to acknowledge that now that we have the African Continental Free Trade Area, that's a regional trade-oriented institution, it's better for that organization to be the voice of Africa at this particular time than individual countries running around being scared about what they should do and not do, so that we take collective action through the AFCFTA, and I also happen to be among the ambassadors then in the United States who signed the initial documents that led to the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA. It was in the 1970s, 1990s, when that particular US law came into existence. So I happen to have had those kinds of experiences, and I thought there's a time when collective knowledge from a number of institutions, a number of personalities, if put together properly on behalf of Africa, can help us all to navigate the choppy waters that are ahead of us. Finally, it is important to state that whatever the United States does is being done by one country. That one country does not control more than about 70% of global trade or global anything. It does contribute 20% or so to the United Nations, and sometimes near 20% to the other multilateral institutions, etc. But notice how the Bank of Canada, former Bank of Canada governor, who also was the Bank of England governor, and who is now Prime Minister of Canada, how he took on America without making any noise. Just attending to the bond markets and getting his European friends with some Asian friends to escalate the cost to the United States of United States borrowing. United States is the world's largest debtor nation, and they are adding to their debts. If you follow the recent debates in Congress about increasing the debt of the United States, because you're a debtor nation making a lot of noise. So if your creditors just get together and they hit you 2 or 3 punches, you're finished. So that's where I think the world can respond to the United States on this particular matter. But there are many other aspects, and I have to give the
Please put your hands together for Doc. Thank you. It's almost like you are answering an exam question and you want to tell the examiner which angle should I come from. From the ambassador angle, from the trade and industry angle, from the AFDB angle. That's why we brought you on the panel. So I think everybody is in a hurry to go into opportunities. But Michael, I just wanted to come to you. So of all the things you said in your presentation, did I hear you say that our narrow diversification of exports is a greater risk? The fact that the concentration on Switzerland, I think it was UAE and India. Can you elaborate on that a bit? If you talk about diversifying exports, you are not referring to products alone. You are referring to countries too. So just elaborate a bit about that before I jump into the substantive question.
Yeah, it's both products and markets.
Okay.
You need to do both. Products, industries, markets. So at the product level, we need to do more value addition.
Okay.
That's been our biggest challenge. Industrialization is hard, but countries have shown that it is possible. It is doable. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of long-term planning and sticking to the plan, not ad hoc approaches that change every 2-4 years. No continuity in policy. So that's been our challenge. So if you look across Africa, and I maybe say something very important about how, if you look at intra-Africa trade, it is the biggest driver of value addition and manufacturing in the continent. So if we want to do more value addition, if we want to industrialize faster, the natural pathway is to do more intra-Africa trade, right? But we're not doing it. So the pathways are there. If we have to diversify our markets, we should look within the continent first.
Okay.
Because the data is clear, right? It's much harder to diversify your value-added and exports into more advanced markets where the competition is stiffer. But we can do it in Africa. So yes, we need to do both products.
Okay.
We need to do diversification of different sectors, but we need to do markets.
Okay.
We did some work a couple of years ago. At Confidence, we're trying to look at what the export potential for various products that Ghana manufactures, is within the African continent. The surprising thing was that in many of the markets where we had a lot of export potential, we were underutilizing that potential. Grossly underutilizing that potential, sometimes by over 50%, 70%.
Okay.
Right? So we know that it's tough, to move goods and commodities within the continent. So it's a different discussion.
All right.
But if we are focused, it can be done. And we need to start first within the continent.
Wonderful. Thank you. So what I hear from my panelists is that there's no sense trying to second guess what Trump will do. But what we need to do is to get our house in order, act collectively, and act deliberately. Each of the 4 panelists has mentioned AFTA. So I want to give you a quick overview of where we are with AFTA. As of May 2025, and by the way, AFTA is a framework that is hoping to eliminate about 90% of our intra-African tariffs. 54 countries have signed, 47 have ratified. So on paper, it looks like the countries are interested. Now, here is the problem. Whether you sign AFTA or not, you have infrastructure problems. Transportation of goods. You have a narrow export base. As he said, most countries are exporting raw commodities. You have a financing gap for diversification. You have non-tariff barriers. I drove to Togo 3 weeks. It was an interesting sight to behold. So the road is the same, but there are many things. So the point is that there are non-tariff barriers, and then there's also fragmented regulations. So I want us to attack the AFTA question in this round. All right? And I'm going to start again with Emmanuel. Let's deal with the financing issue. There's always a financing gap somewhere. Doc is talking about Afrexim Bank being the real bank that will spare the trade issue in Africa. You are head of trade at a big bank. What are your thoughts around how to crack financing for the African continent when it comes to export diversification and also enhance export? What is the issue? Is it interest rates? Is it lack of capital from somewhere? Recently we are told that even Afrexim Bank was downgraded by some credit rating agency. Do we have our own credit rating agency? What do we need to do to crack the finance component of the AFTA conundrum? Is my question clear? All right. So please, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Bernard. I think the financing issue can be in several parts. We're looking at the short term and also the long term. And to your point, with regards to after and for us to really trade amongst ourselves very well, we require a very robust transport network, which will require long-term financing. So, in that,
which one comes first?
So, transport is very key, because if you produce goods and you can't transport it, how do you get value out of those goods?
But how do you build the transportation if you don't have money?
I always say that the issue is not about there's no money. Banks are investors, and they will only invest when the risk is low. Banks, and it's depositors' money. So
forget about banks for a minute. Finance broadly, not just banks qua banks.
Sure.
So what you said, does that apply to all types of finance or just banks?
So, I mean, we all know about venture capital and all those, and angel investors and all that. The level of funds available from those sectors will not be adequate to support this drive. So, obviously, there need to be a collective agenda in terms of mobilizing funds for this agenda, which, I mean, AFDB could take, a center stage in helping banks on the continent to mobilize. But this funding will be available when there's a proper assessment of the opportunities and the risk inherent in implementing these projects. Because no bank wants to invest and then the returns doesn't come through. It's depositors' money.
So let's make it practical. Dakar to Lagos is a major corridor. Ghana has about 40% of that. It's probably, even within Ghana, it's probably the most difficult road to use from Elubo to Aplao, right? The Ivory Coast side is pretty decent. I was in Togo. The roads are pretty good. So should we have a regional approach to financing that road, or should we have a national approach? Because the standards are different, right? How do you do Dakar to Lagos? Is it something that big banks should come together to think about? I just want you to help me here.
So in terms of that financing approach, yes, banks will come together, but it will start with the states. The countries need to come in to say that what is our commitment to this agenda. Government, and I don't know whether it's through AU or whichever institution, needs to come and build a plan. How are we deploying this? What is the benefit that will accrue? And all this will require data points, research to support that. Because once you are seeking financing from banks or investors, they will look at the cost-benefit analysis, what is in there for them. And until as a continent, we are able to come together and have a very robust plan as to how this could be. It will be difficult for us to attract the needed funding.
Last question on that point. Sorry, I'm pushing you. PPPs have been touted a lot. It's a buzzword now. From your experience in the sector, is that the outlet to crack financing, PPPs?
It is an alternate area you can source financing, but it still comes to the same point that these PPPs are in for returns. So you ultimately need to work on a plan that will attract these investments. And I think that is what we have not been able to do. Even within the West African sub-region, in terms of mobilizing these funds, what is our blueprint in terms of developing our transport network?
All right. So, mind you, I listed 5 problems with AFTA. Infrastructure, narrow export base, the financing gap, non-tariff barriers, and then regulations that are conflicting. So I want to take any comments on the financing so that it will be a more structured discussion. Any thoughts on the panel on, is financing the most important problem at all? If it's not, maybe you don't think so. What's the most important problem that AFTA needs to crack? Is it the leadership? What is it?
I would say political commitment.
Political will.
It's our biggest problem. So we sign the agreements, but then when it comes to putting in place the local policies and regulations to actually implement it, it's problematic. we like saying we don't have money on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is we have money, but it's deployed in the wrong way.
Okay.
We have pension funds that are garnering very low interest rates sitting in the US. Now, in about X number of years, I'll be calling on my pension. I've got a way to go, but I'm still thinking ahead on calling on my pension. I don't want my pension in risky investments if the regulatory framework is not there. But if the regulatory framework is there, the money is available, okay? Our tax systems, whenever we talk about illicit financial flows, we like to talk a lot about the money our politicians are taking out. We don't fight for the money that large international corporates are taking out that we are not getting back as taxes. So for me, money is not the problem. When our leaders decide they want to do something, they make it happen. And I spoke earlier on about the Lobito corridor in Southern Africa.
Yeah.
When they decided to make it happen, I was we are doing some work in Zambia, and I was in a meeting with the Minister of Finance, and I said, how did you guys do this? And they said, it's a combination of private capital, our own national government money. So there were bits of it where their own national government committed because they didn't want to, what do you call it, tolls on it. So in this agreement across X number of countries, if you don't want tolls, you build that bit. But you have to build it. This is the deal we've made. They brought in foreign direct investment. A lot of work went into project preparation. A lot of work went into cross-border challenges that they had to navigate. A lot of work went into agreeing standards. Because every single one on that corridor has an incentive. From copper to EV batteries, the end game is actually electric vehicles in South Africa. That's what they're all going after. And if we can get that electric vehicle market in South Africa really working well, we won't just export to Africa. Our target is way beyond that. We are going after Europe and North America with our EV cars.
Okay.
If we can get, but they are not looking at it as, let's do everything in Zambia. Let's do everything in Zimbabwe.
Follow-up question
let's
for
not
you.
do everything here. It's about, let's do a little bit here. Let's specialize in this. Let's specialize in this. Let's specialize in this.
Yeah.
And together, let's win the war.
Maybe it's on the Lobito corridor. Are you suggesting that it may make more sense to look at African integration from a regional bloc's perspective? West Africans, the East Africans, the SADC guys, then eventually the bloc work together. Is that a better approach?
In the short to medium term, it probably would be the quickest and best approach. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. But because our countries were built to trade raw materials out, okay, the ability to try and interconnect it all at once is going to be difficult. So if we can be more intentional, and somebody said earlier on about focus, planning, etc., I'd like to say we need to be more intentional. If we can be more intentional and say, okay, I'm going to be a bit controversial, can I? Okay. We are all talking about tomato factories in Ghana right now.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Aliko Dangote's factory does not have enough raw materials to produce canned tomatoes, okay? If we all said, actually, forget trying to do it on each of our doorsteps, we are all going to find a way of getting our excess tomatoes to this factory and let this factory provide it at a cost-effective rate. And we can all get access to local tinned tomatoes in low season at an affordable rate. At the same time, movement of labor becomes easy. So it's not just Nigerians in the factory. Wherever we have skills in the sub-region, we can go. Okay? And we make that commitment. We might lose out on tomato production in Ghana. But do you know what everybody thinks about when they think about shea butter? They don't think about anywhere but Ghana. Everybody thinks shea butter comes from Ghana. But actually, less than, I think it's something like 30% of the shea trees that we used to ship out is actually grown in Ghana. They buy the bulk of the share in the countries around the region.
Okay.
Around the region, and then they produce it in Ghana. So we say, okay, we're going to be the shea hub for West Africa and do it seriously.
Okay.
I'm just giving examples of how we can make the connectivity work.
Okay.
But Ben, everybody's talking about roads, okay? And everybody's talking about trains and all of it. If we build the infrastructure, but the basic trade facilitation systems are not working. If I get to the border and I'm still being harassed because I'm a woman, if I get to the border and I'm still being harassed because I'm carrying X, we can have the best infrastructure in the world. It still will.
So for you, the political will is at the top.
Number one.
All right. Let me take Doc's view on what AFTA needs to do. You put up a nice building for them, and they have a nice CEO who gives very beautiful speeches. But I suspect your intention was not for that. You wanted more traction. So what are your top 3 or 4 things you think we need to do for AFTA to really kick off?
Thank you very much. But just to correct that, I was working on behalf of the Republic of Ghana and not
Oh, of course.
for myself.
Oh, forgive me.
The president at the time, who is still our president, is Excellency John Mahama. So that was part of his vision, and it is with his authority and support that we made that kind of progress.
Okay.
Now, when we come to the implementation of AFTA, it's at different levels. I think what we must acknowledge, when we say political will or leadership, we can always blame, if you like to use that word, our leaders. But the honest truth is that our leaders, as far back as the 60s, especially through Kwame Nkrumah, our first president, they recognized the importance of collective action. They were the ones who suggested, let's have an African Union with a headquarters in Addis Ababa, which has been there for almost 70 years, doing hopefully reasonably appropriate things. It is the African Union which gave birth to the African Continental Free Trade Secretariat. Yeah. So we must recognize that political will flowing through that. It's the same African nations, political will, who created ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, and also put money into some of the ECOWAS institutions, such as ECOWAS Bank, ECOWAS Fund. These are all financial institutions. So the politicians have misbehaved often, yes, but they also take sensible decisions on our collective behalf, which, when we implement them, hopefully we'll get the right results. But here are financial people or bankers in a room, and we are talking about remittances. If we say that, okay, Ghana probably got 6 billion or whatever in remittances, if you do collective African remittances, it's in the 90 to 100 billion range per annum.
Yes.
So that's a source of money which goes to people's mothers and fathers and uncles in their little villages and towns, but there's no collective system of aggregating those funds to do infrastructure work or whatever. So there's a time for an African diaspora fund, African infrastructure fund, all kinds of African. I have to say, I think Pan-African. Yeah. That's why I may be the only one in this room who has a small office called Africa House. If anybody has an Africa House, let me know so that I also withdraw that particular statement. But that's how I think. And that's partly also why I'm championing an Africa business ABCDE business,
yes.
Center for Developing Education. That's on the educational side.
ABC.
And so the skills development issues that we need to inculcate or bring into the AFC, FTA area, both in terms of behavioral skills and all the things that our law enforcement agencies do on the borders that interfere with a woman coming with, or a man coming with goods and services and, being hit with informal, unofficial, corrupt, stealing, whatever that goes on. Those are all things that must be inculcated in ourselves, in our children, in our grandchildren, all throughout. So the education system has something to do with that. But coming back to the financing part, which was a problem, the remittances were one. The pension funds, the pensions are, to the best of my knowledge or recollection, in Ghana alone, I think it's an African figure. It's in the 600 billion range, Pan-African. So where's that Pan-African pension fund, which could easily do any number of things? The long-term funds are what we need for railways. So let us look at what our colonial masters did. We had raw materials. They wanted to bring it to the coast. What did they do? They didn't build all kinds of roads. They went straight to railways, being the cheapest volume, transformational undertaking infrastructure in any part of the world. If any of us go anywhere in the world, we take trains from this to that. Yeah. We take trains from New York to Washington, from Osaka to Tokyo. So the train system, very critical. We are talking about going to Burkina Faso. Yes, we've had that on the drawing board for many years, but implementation is not there. Actually, people end up stealing the railway tracks, the physical railway tracks. So hopefully the oral people will come up with who has been doing the railway track stealing one of these days. So the infrastructure program. Now, Kwame Nkrumah also set an example, Black Star Line. So there's a time this one country of Ghana had 22 merchant ships which were sailing the seas of Africa. And the idea was to have an African shipping line. Because Black Star Line came from the idea of Marcus Garvey from the 1920s. Why shouldn't Africa and African Americans and Caribbean Africans who also ship from Africa come in one force to create a shipping line instead of depending on European or other shipping lines who bring goods and services. I'm talking about after now. Because your shipments, if they are owned by other people, you can't really have control over your economy, the cost, the financing, the insurance, and all those things. And so there's an African Insurance Organization, mostly in East Africa, Africa Trade Insurance. Okay, so the financial building blocks are more or less in place. African Development Bank is there. African Export Bank is there. The Africa Trade Insurance people are there. I'm saying now let's add African pensions, let's add African remittances, and then the member countries can implement these programs more efficiently. But then the human factor will always be there. How to stop ordinary police people, ordinary border guards, or whoever they call themselves, gendarmes, interfering with the trade. And those then become local implementation issues. Wow. There's a lot to be said. But I was also an advisor at one time to an African railway project, which didn't get very far. But there's a continental thinking about that. I've been also both a shareholder and a partner, an advisor to an African telecommunication infrastructure project, fiber optic, to link up the countries, which also reduce the cost of knowledge transmission and commercial transmission and this and that. So there are many things that I'm saying that the Pan-African approach is key to me in terms of almost everything we want to do to reduce the cost, to aggregate the market size, because any country by itself is small. Ghana is a very, very small country in global economy. Even the whole of Africa, we are often less than 2% of global trade, 2% of global savings, 2% of almost everything. So until we aggregate our strength, we are always a small fry. We have our Ouagadougou Accord, which was supposed to unify African airlines. We had Air Afrique at one time, mostly Pan-African. I mean, it was a Francophone African project. And also that collapsed for reasons we can't get into today. So Africa has tried to do some collective projects, some of which have worked very well. I was part of East and Southern Africa telecom project called EASY when I was at the Common Telecom Organization. We put that project together, put the regulatory and protocols together, Kigali Accord, and it's working till today. 22 countries own that common infrastructure for telecommunications in the Eastern and Southern African corridor. So these things are possible, but we must do more. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for the panel. Just a second. Just to remind everybody that we are live on Channel 1 Television. It's 2 minutes to 11. We're also live on 97.3 CDFM. This is the City Business Forum, and we're basically discussing global trade uncertainties as expressed through President Trump's tariff agenda. And we're zeroing in on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So essentially, my panel is saying that whatever Mr. Trump does, our long-term solution is in acting together and starting with ourselves, which is why I zeroed in on the after, pointing out about 5 issues in after that need to be addressed. I like to say that on the finance side, we've had some important suggestions in terms of unlocking pensions, in terms of aggregating private remittance to make it a powerful vehicle for infrastructural transformation. We've also been told that for the infrastructure side, rail seems to be the most sensible for long term. Telecommunications infrastructure also critical as well. Political will has also been pointed out by another panelist that is part of the challenge that we need to address. The only thing I haven't seen yet is non-tariff barriers, but I've had allusions to that. And then, of course, the narrow export base has been eloquently articulated by Michael. Now, the only thing I just wanted to ask finally before we open the floor is, so yes, Ghana is a small country, but Doc, so too is Vietnam, all right? So too is Cambodia, so too is Thailand. These days, look, a lot of the footballs we play, They are made in those countries. A lot of the T-shirts we wear, they found a way to become the world's, what's the word I want to use? The world's, whatever. They are skilled at certain things, and they do it so well that even large-scale global organizations go and make those things there. So what I'm asking is, we can say AFTA and everything, but what can Ghana do to diversify? Because that's something within our control, right? So cocoa, gold, oil are there other areas we can seriously, strategically diversify into, which will give us an advantage? For example, produce a lot of cotton within the West African Sahel zone. Should we be having a program on textiles? All right. There's a whole conversation about cashew. You also spoke about shea and the cosmetics industry, the so-called non-traditional exports. I want somebody to give me something Ghana should focus on. Whilst the African group does whatever they do, any thoughts around one or two areas that the country strategically should say, we're going to get a chunk of this and we're going to use that as a key driver of diversification? So this is for the panel before I open the floor. So who's going to take that for me?
If I have to select one project, I'll say jewelry.
Jewelry.
We have the gold. We are not, and it's being used a certain way. And our forefathers, almost in all villages, there was a goldsmith somewhere. Goldsmith. Now, the word goldsmith probably is disappearing even from our dictionaries. And if you ask anybody, do you know any goldsmith in your village or in your hometown or in Sekandi Takradi or Kumasi? Most people do not know a goldsmith. And yet, there has been jewelry processing and refining and training department in the University of Science and Technology. In fact, they even called me at one time to be chairman of that organization for a certain number of years. And so the skills development, I know there are a few companies in Ghana that are jewelry manufacturing companies, but now that we have a gold board and the jewelry production part is all part of the gold board's responsibility, we must highlight that. And with this 24-hour economy where people can be trained and skilled in all kinds of fields, if we decide that we're going to convert our $16 billion of gold exports, not in raw form, but at least we must export 50% in jewelry form. You see, an ounce of gold may be $3,000 or whatever it is today. But if you convert that 1 ounce of gold and you get it marketed by Beyonce, for example, or some other celebrity, that ounce of gold is $100,000 because of the person wearing it or the name brand on it. All these European name brands that we like, Louis Vuitton, whatever it is that we, the leather itself is only, less than 10 cedis or $20. But because of the name on it, we can also have a sewa, gold.
So for you, jewelry is one
jewelry,
area.
Certainly. You can do furniture, you can do all kinds
So I'm taking everybody's one. You think jewelry is a good because of the way it works. Emmanuel.
Thanks, Bernard. So maybe we may look at the palm industry and what Malaysia... Palm.
Okay.
And what Malaysia has done with palm.
Oil palm.
We are in this country... soap manufacturing businesses are importing palm crude. Why should that be so? And I think whilst we are looking at exporting, we also need to look at what can we substitute and reduce our imports.
Correct.
Because balancing trade is a two lever.
Yes, sir.
You either bringing down your imports and then increasing your exports.
So we're talking about import substitution.
Import substitution. So what can we do
to
build that palm value chain such that industries who need this material to produce will be able to get them locally and even feed it to the sub-region.
All right.
I think it's a critical area. Then one last thing I want to highlight is our cocoa industry when it comes to value chain. We have over 500,000 metric ton capacity when it comes to processing of cocoa.
All right.
Out of that, less than 50% is currently being used. And we continue to export raw beans out of this country. Why should that happen?
That is good. So we have gold, we have palm, we have cocoa. Let me come to Mavis on any other area of diversification you think Ghana should be seriously considering?
So, Ben, this is our problem. We have too many options. And so we never focus.
Oh, Lord.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
So if you look at, if you even look at the latest asset report that we did on where Ghana should diversify, I believe we picked 8 areas.
8.
Ghana cannot do 8 properly. Okay, we've got to be intentional in picking 1 or 2.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, honestly, I can sit here and tell you my favorite 2. My favorite 2 at the moment are textiles and chocolate.
Textiles
Simple.
and
Yeah.
chocolate.
And it has to be done across the sub-region. It has to be something we work with our partners on. So, the cotton for Ghana, the West Africa fashion industry, it has to be very intentional in how we do it. Okay, and I'm picking that because the government has said that they want to do the Akosombo link. I think it's a great opportunity for the corridor.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart to go into supermarkets in Ghana, and see that our Ghanaian chocolates cannot compete with rubbish American chocolate. It really breaks my heart. So that's why I have my own little pet project on Ghana chocolate, and I'm a big champion of Ghanaian chocolatiers.
Wonderful.
That's
Thank you.
my thing. But Ben, I know you are rushing. One very quick thing. I think right now, somebody needs to pick 2. And 1 is not agro-processing. Agro-processing is not a sector.
It's too broad.
It's too broad. Pick 2 things, and let's just get on with it. Because when you asked just now about Vietnam is a small country, how did they do it? Yeah. They picked 1 thing, and they got on with it. They didn't have 8 ideas on a panel. Somebody has to make that decision, and we just need to put our eggs in that basket and go for it.
Luckily, there are some institutions in this room who are part of the answer in terms of where the priority of government is. So, for example, we have Development Bank Ghana here, who I believe focus on key areas of government in terms of unlocking long-term capital. So I'll come to them shortly. I don't know if I have Exim Bank here. It would be nice to also hear from them as well. But let me take, Michael, your quick comment on area. I've heard textiles, I've heard chocolate, I've heard palm, I've heard cocoa, I've heard jewelry. Anything else that you believe should be an area we should consider for diversification?
Mindset.
Mindset. Messi. The mindset of the African. Wow. Can you get to elaborate?
That's where it all starts.
Okay.
That's where it all starts. From our leaders all the way down to the youngest toddler that's growing into this culture.
Yeah.
We have a mindset problem. And not until we transform that mindset, we cannot transform the economy.
Wow.
So we like to, and I'm becoming very frustrated with these panel discussions. I've been a part of so many of these discussions.
You're not even 50 years old.
I'm not yet.
So imagine what SPO will be. If you are frustrated, then SPO should be,
we have these discussions all the time.
Yeah.
We have these brilliant discussions, Get
on with it.
And we're still where we are.
Yes.
It's frustrating, it's depressing.
Oh, Lord.
So there's something wrong with our mindset, obviously. And we need to transform that.
All right.
Before we can transform anything, before we can diversify in anything. I don't have the answer.
Okay.
Some way, somehow, we've got to figure that out.
Okay.
But I think if you ask me, we have to treat that as a priority product. The way we treat our priority products. We have to choose 8 products. We should always make sure there's a 9th product, which is mindset.
The mindset. Wonderful.
If we're choosing 5, there should always be a 6th one,
which is the mindset.
Maybe says 2. I would say we should add a 3rd one, which is mindset.
Correct.
Before, the whole intra-Africa trade thing, let me just come back to that. Before I go to that, cashew. Ivory Coast produces more cashew than Vietnam.
Yeah.
But Vietnam's cashew exports are about 10 times more than the value of Ivory Coast's cashew exports. And the only difference is one country just exports raw cashew, and the other one buys raw cashew from everywhere,
including Ghana.
And that's a lot of value addition. And they're making 10 times more.
Yeah.
And in Ghana, we're in the same situation.
Yeah.
This you can't tell me is because we can't get financing to do value addition. You can't tell me it's because we can't build infrastructure, we can't build factories. It's a mindset problem. Right? The discussions we've had about inter-Africa trade, we keep talking about building rails and all of that, and I'm all for that. But there are simple things we should do that we're not doing. There's air cargo and there's air freight. There's so much inter-Africa trade we can get going just with airlines.
Okay.
You don't have to build a rail. It just flies and lands. We can do that. We're not doing that because sometimes I feel we are not willing and ready to actually do the trade. We like talking about Pan-Africanism. We like talking about inter-Africa trade. Are we actually willing to do it?
That's the question.
You know? I don't know.
Don't get frustrated. You have many more years to live.
But I can only zero it down to a mindset issue.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we should add that. We should include that as one of the priorities.
I saw you were trying to applaud when you mentioned mindset. So you should applaud. If that's what you wanted to do, you can do it now. So put your hands together for the panel. We're still live here at Alisa Hotel. 2 quick statistics for you. Africa currently imports over 70% of its apparel. So collectively as a continent, we import 70% of the clothes we wear. We import between 66 to 73% of our cocoa-based products, final products. We also import over half of our automotive and processed mineral needs from outside the continent. Just to buttress the point that there's a big market for these things here if we would get on with it, using maybe this word. Now, this is what I want to do with the open forum. I'm going to sort of call people to the table so that it will be more structured and useful. So, and by the way, I've received a couple of comments from the public so that they don't feel like I've left them out. Let me just read a couple before I come in-house here. Clement Owusu watching from Nungwa. Mr. Spio, the way things are right now, where would you advise the youth put their attention in terms of investment and financial stability? George Besse from Oyarifa. Just how much of the city's performance against the dollar can be attributed to the government's actions? I don't know what program he's listening to, but he has his own. Maybe he's looking for facts to go and argue somewhere. So you can help him later. Vanessa Cole from Adenta. What are the implications of the current tariff situation be for the regular Ghanaian? So they want you to make it simple for them. Will it lead to more inflation? How is it going to affect the ordinary Ghanaian wages and that type of thing? That's from Vanessa. Frank Basson from Hohwe. I personally think our tourism sector is one we should take a closer look at and focus on as a nation. We have so much to offer as a nation in terms of tourism and tourist attractions. It could easily be used to raise interest in investing for investors. The nation has too much to offer in that regard. Imagine if we polish up the experience that we offer to people in and through the various tourist attractions. I am well informed that the president of the Hotels Association, Dr. Edward Akanyameke, is here. So that question is calling your name. So I'll come to you when I open the floor. Another comment from Kweku. There are already working models. Bernard, the potential is clear and we know what steps to take to build on them. What is needed is collective commitment. Unfortunately, stakeholders often shift blame rather than take responsibility. AFTA was meant to be the unifying force that brings everyone to the table for concrete implementation. With genuine commitment, nothing is beyond our reach for AFTA. My name is Kweku. I'm liking the comments. I don't know. Do you like the comments? Yeah, they are making a lot of sense. Bernard, don't forget cashew. The potential to rake in millions of dollars from cashew is mind-boggling. This is Humphrey in Sakumono. Wow. Good morning, Channel 1. I love your business discussion today. I am Yazid, an accountant at Ghana Health Service and an onion farmer around Kwehu. Hey. Does your boss know you are putting this on air? That you are an accountant at GHS and an onion farmer. JB, can you mute this part? Because this. So some of the people who are serving you at GHS, they are onion farmers in Kwehu East. Is it correct? Okay. We just want to know that he's not using NHIS time to do the onion. It looks like a lot of people here are doing side hustles, eh? No, but we have to do a lifestyle audit too. A GHS accountant, onion farmer. Okay, very good. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I want to bring in DBG. DBG had a very strong team here. So Dr. Randolph is here with his team. Michael is here as well. And the rest of them. I want to just open it up, but I think the finance side would be nice. And then chief economist, what about the discussion has struck you? And how does your institution, so maybe you answer the general question, and then Ralph will answer how DBG helps address some of the financing issues we've said. So, Prof, you just give me your quick thoughts on this economic discussion. Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think it's been very insightful discussion.
That's Professor Eric Osei, Chief Economist, DBG. Yes.
Thank you. So let me just start from where I think Michael made a statement about the fact that we seem to be enjoying some form of windfall from the current, tariff war, particularly coming through the gold prices that we are getting. Yes, that is very true. But we should also note that we know if you look at the historical trends of gold, I mean, it's really very volatile. There's often wide swings in pricing. And therefore, that is something that we have to be very particular about to ensuring that we do take advantage of the current situation, right?
Okay.
Because it's going to lead to a situation where your currency is appreciating, yet it's good, but it could also lead to Dutch disease, as you know, right? The appreciating currency will mean that your trade export becomes uncompetitive in a way. So you may not be able to take advantage of what is going on after all, because you'll be priced out of the market, So you have to make sure that you balance that. But the way to do that, more importantly, is to look at how do we create a competitive environment, because we've mentioned all the products that we seem to have some form of comparative advantage, right? Palm oil, cashews, and all of that. But that in itself will not get us into the global value chain. Tariff or no tariff, what will take us there is the competitiveness of the produce that we make. Right. If we are able to produce at competitive price, no matter the tariff, you'll still be able to penetrate. Right. So our focus really it should be on how do we ensure that we support indigenous firms, the private sector, to be able to produce at competitive price.
Right.
It's very important. I mean, looking at the value chain, our cost of production is huge. More often than not, these days we talk about inclusive growth, we're talking about sustainable growth. Before we used to talk about pro-poor growth. But really what matters for me is the endogenous growth. The endogenous growth tends to look at the key levers of your production. Right? What will drive competitiveness? Dr. They mentioned about skills. Our skill set is important, right? We have to be able to make sure that we build the necessary skill set that helps out to upskill our production process. Because more often than not, you can produce share, you can produce cashews, but our per unit cost is often very high. We have to make sure that our producers have access to medium, long-term capital, affordable capital that will make them competitive, right? Adoption of technology. So we have to be very intentional about rebuilding endogenous growth.
So let me hear you right. If we even choose the area of specialization, we must make sure that we are competitive. That means that we produce at a lower cost, and we can produce more per unit than our competitors. So that it will be affordable wherever, whether they're selling to China or America or to Iran. So that's the point.
That's the point.
That's the point you're making.
We have the influx of textiles. We talk about, garments and all the apparels. But if you are not competitive, we'll have the influx of textiles coming from
But
China.
just to understand you, to be competitive, you are saying you need two things. You need skills, but also the finance.
You need
because if the cost of funds is too high, so we probably need cheap power, cheap money, and then good labor. That is productive. So those are like three anchor areas.
Absolutely, Productivity growth is key.
All right. I'll stay on that table. Thank you. Randolph, you have to talk. You are the head of DBG. So have you identified Because my people give you jewelry, palm, cocoa, textiles. What did they mention? Chocolate, cashew. At least you should be supporting one or two, because you have money that you on-lend to banks. So you give money to this guy, and then he will give it to the NHIS guy who is doing onion. So do you tell him what area he should spend it? As in, you say, for me, textiles is what I want you to give it to. Or he will say, forget our textiles. We want to do import-export because people are bringing chalewote from China. That's where you get a return. So what do you, as a development bank, tell a commercial bank? And how do you insist that the policy of the government means that the money trickles down to that guy who's farming onion in Kwanta or wherever he's farming the onion?
Yeah, so thank you. It works in 3 stages. The first is that as a bank, we need to plug into the national priorities.
Okay.
Which means that at various stages during our strategic sections, we need to have engagements with our shareholder, which in this case is the Ministry of Finance, to share with them a plethora of evidence around where we consider to be the growth pools. What we call growth pools are essentially areas that we believe that the multiplier effect of our investments would deliver comparatively more value than in other areas. So the first stage of it is plugging into the national priorities. The second stage of it then is, after that plug-in, basically building a comprehensive set of evidence-based strategies on how to unleash that mandate. So as we speak currently, our mandate currently is in 4 areas, basically without data all the time, essentially agri, manufacturing, ICT, and areas we call value-added service. You can repackage that to essentially say that we are focused on food security, import substitution, and human capital development, because we invest a lot in health and in education. So what happens then is that then the last lever is engagement with the PFIs that would be the participating financial institutions that we work with. For them, first of all, to plug into what our priority areas are. So there are various sessions we have with them at the beginning of the year, throughout the year, various trainings, various co-creation and co-branding initiatives that we engage with them. So invariably, in as much as we leave the development of the pipelines to them, those pipelines must plug into our core mandate and what we call our priority areas. What we are focused on, essentially, which Prof was trying to suggest, is that we are trying to offer an additionality, not competition. So we are trying to focus on areas that we believe the market has failed in. And that essentially is in providing medium to long-term capital. And not necessarily to compete with the financial institutions in the space where they know how to do best. So that we don't end up cannibalizing the whole market in some sort, and that what we bring expands the market rather than scale it down.
Thank you. I like this. So food security, import substitution, human capital development. Fantastic. Now, thank you. I like to move to any other financial institution in the house. Is Exim Bank here? Anywhere from Exim Bank? Yes. Any quick thoughts from you guys? How different are you from them? And because Doc mentioned that the Exim is critical for the conversation around trade and tariffs. So introduce yourself, please.
My name is William Obeng.
Yes.
I'm the General Manager for Projects, Ghana Exim Bank. I think one fundamental difference between us and DBG is that DBG is a wholesale bank, so they lend to financial institutions for on-lending, but we do direct lending. Yes, and taken from all that people have said and what we have seen, I've always believed that you can't be everything to everyone. So we need to focus, and we need to stay the course. I'll give an example. Exim Bank, we targeted the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry to help them put up global good manufacturing practice plans, GMP plans. And the few which have which we've completed and which have started work, really helped us even during the COVID era. Producing, they were producing the sanitizers, and then they were producing all those vitamins for us. And I think if we stay the course and support even more of them, then we should get, because we should get to a point where we become significant. If you look at the global pharmaceutical sector now, it's about maybe almost $600 billion. If you look at the whole of Africa, I think we are about 50 or thereabouts. So, but there's a gap for us, contract manufacturing, because it doesn't make sense for someone to produce, let's say, antibiotics in Europe. Maybe they don't have that kind of disease all the time. At higher cost, because employment...
It makes sense to produce it here.
Yes, makes sense to produce it here. And then we become relevant and we...
So for you in the past, pharmaceuticals has been one. He mentioned import substitution, he mentioned human capital development, and then I think he mentioned food security. Does EXIM have any 2 or 3 priority areas?
So as EXIM, if you check on our website, 1, we want to generate mass employment.
Okay.
2 is value addition.
Okay.
And then either FX savings or FX inflow. So it's basically along the same line. So those are the three major.
So you definitely support non-traditional exports as well. So like textiles,
very much,
agric, and those things, you are into those as well.
And we did support them. So you see COVID, the PP, the PPEs which were being produced, some of them were supported by us.
Thank you. Let me move to another group. There are a lot of business groups here. So this is what I'm going to do. I will start with the hotels, then I'll come to the FABAG, then I'll deal with import-export, COPEC, and then the trade guys, and I'll end with the parliament. So let's do it like a minute each, your quick thoughts. So Mr. Akanyameke, somebody said we ignored the tourism sector completely, and the texter was reminding me that that is a large employer and is also good for FX. Anything to add to the discussion, and what do we need to know about your sector that can be an opportunity in this discussion?
Thank you very much, Bernard, and good morning to all. Indeed, when you asked for the priority areas, I was hoping that tourism would be the first to be mentioned. So I was very happy when somebody mentioned it. Indeed, I have gone as far as suggesting that we should even model our development on tourism.
Is it?
Because tourism affects almost everything. Everything can be tourism. And modeling our development on tourism would mean that we synthesize every aspect of the economy to think tourism.
Okay.
The bottom line must be tourism in all the sectors of the economy. Because that's what's going to promote people coming into the country, market the country, and then they also enjoying every aspect of the economy when they get here. And you see, the interesting thing about tourism, which sometimes we ignore, is that the cost of operating it is relatively cheaper. I mean, if you talk about cocoa and gold, the money is received by government, and the government now has the burden of redistributing to the public.
Yeah.
But tourism, when somebody is coming to the system, he starts distributing the money along the way. He goes to the transport, he goes to hotels, he goes to the tour operators, he goes to the tour guides, he goes to the restaurants. So they distribute the money themselves.
Okay.
Because indeed, what is the goal of all these things we are discussing? Is to increase the purchasing power of the Ghanaian and to make their life more comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I think that we have not given that much attention
to tourism
as we should.
Is tourism a net FX saver for us? It does?
It does.
Do you source locally? Because some hotels you go, some of the food on the table, I don't even know where it's coming from. I mean, don't you think that one of the ways you can help us is to be the major off-taker of our agric sector? I mean, we just had breakfast here. This is a great hotel. It's a Ghanaian hotel, right? But usually, some hotels you go, everything you are eating is from somewhere else.
Yes. You see, Bernard, it's about demand and supply.
Huh? That one is about demand and supply. It should be about strategic objective.
Well, you see, this is an industry that operates locally, but with a global appeal in mind. Because you have visitors all over the world, and it is what they require that you provide.
But when they come to Ghana, they want to eat Ghana.
Yes, you can.
You don't travel from America and come to Ghana and say you want to eat pizza. You want to eat.
You see, you can make that deliberate effort, but it takes time to do that. Otherwise, then you're also going to have a situation where you're going to lose a lot of.
No, they will still come. I'm telling you. When I go to China, I don't want to eat Ghanaian food. I want to eat Chinese food. So when they come to Ghana, eat Ghanaian food. Because you are such a large industry. And I was talking to Ralph, your colleague, and he says that for their hotel, every food they eat, the source is from Ghana, whether it's fish or meat. And it's been going well for them.
Yeah, Bernard, the point I'm trying to make is that we have made a lot of inroads into that.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the consumption of food and beverage by the hotels, it is massive.
Okay.
Okay. We are getting to the point where we will have to encourage the production of those things that we don't get here.
Correct.
And sometimes the challenge is that the quality, the reliability of the supplies, when it is coming, it becomes an issue.
Fair enough.
And so to save your neck,
you import.
Exactly.
Fair enough. But I think your point is well taken. I'm going to talk now to the Food and Beverage Association briefly because, and I'm doing this in a systematic way, so everybody will get a chance. Now, somebody said we need to be more productive. Who said that? Professor Isibe. Is there any manufacturer in the room? That's the first question. Any AGI, Chamber of something? Is there any manufacturer? Okay, so my good friend John Awuni. So, do you agree that the issue is being competitive in production, which means you need cheaper source of funds, but also higher skilled workers? Just talk to us about how competitive you are. By the way, do you manufacture or you import? That's the first question we'll be asking you.
Well, for food and beverage, we have manufacturers and then we have importers.
Wonderful. And do you agree that to be competitive, you need better sources of funds, better technology, and also cheaper sources of productive labor?
Obviously, thank you very much, but obviously all those factors come into play and trying to get a product out to the consumer. More especially when we have in a situation where disposable incomes of consumers are being eroded as a result of high cost of living. So essentially, I think that over the period, what has hampered the marketing of Ghanaian produced goods have been the high cost. In the year 2001, for instance, I began a project to ensure that we produce local rice, we brand it, we package it very well, and the general branding, and then we can sell out. What eventually killed that product was the high cost of the produce.
Okay.
Farmers were more or less looking at what the price of the imported product is, and then they sell their paddy. For instance, paddy at that price before, and then paddy is the raw unprocessed rice, and before. So you look at the whole thing. They are looking at. They want to price their product compared to the mill rice.
Okay.
So eventually that did not work out. Much as I did over the period, we marketed it, we did so much, but at the end of the day, this is a new product that was coming to the market and needed to penetrate the market at a reasonably low price so that consumers can try it and then order. It did not work out because of the high cost. So if we want to get Ghanaian produce, for instance, let me come back, there are other products. If you go into the area, that doesn't fall in our domain. But if you go into the area of electrical products, and I have always said we've tried some of the local electrical products, you'll find out that I don't want to mention the cables, but they are more expensive than those ones that come in from Turkey and UK and then others. And so you find out that in the competitive market, people go in to patronize that. So I could go on and on, but the fact is that I would say that for this country to be able to make a headway in producing, making sure that consumers patronize what we produce locally, we have to ensure that our products are competitive.
So that's quality and price.
If you take, for instance, the beers, without mentioning any brand, the price of beer, for instance, increased from 140 cedis in December to 220 cedis. In the face of the strength of the cedi against the dollar.
Okay, and this is a locally manufactured beer?
This is a local manufactured. Okay. And so if you have beer coming from wherever it's coming from, much cheaper than you are here. And in the face of where we are even saying that I lead that group, I really don't understand it.
Okay, so you are saying a lot of things, but because of structure, from what I hear you say, we need to find a way of making things cheaper in Ghana. And that's how to be competitive, because at the end of the day, whoever is buying also wants to save. So if you say I should buy local and local is too expensive, I'm not going to buy it. I think that's the point you're making.
So point that I'm making. So in terms of structure, just to summarize, let me summarize. I will say that we have to deal with our technology. Okay. Indeed, human attitude, the attitude of the mindset is a very critical.
There's something even called pricing culture. I'll come to it, but for want of time, please understand me. I'm trying to put a lot of points into one conversation, so please bear with me. Let me take a couple of comments from CATS International. Apia, you've been talking to me a lot about Ghanaian pricing culture. You also talk about competition law, and you feel like the institutional arrangement around customer service also needs to be tidied up if you are to be competitive. Can you just give me a couple of thoughts around that whilst we are in this area of being competitive?
Okay, thank you very much, Bernard, and also the viewers. I think as a country, we've not done well with the entirety of our Ghanaian market. Our market is largely informal, and people price their goods without using any scientific approach. And speculative pricing is also has taken over. Of course, in economics, we say that prices are sticky downwards, but how do we allow private sectors and trade associations also to dictate prices for their of the goods that they sell? Sometimes you hear that, sachet water producers saying that on the 1st of May 2024, a bag of sachet is 10 cedis, and everywhere you go is 10 cedis. Meanwhile, now that the cedi price, the cedi has even appreciated, we are not getting the prices coming down. And so we need to ensure that the chambers that we have in this country do not become cartels. Look at cement. Almost every chambers are protecting their interests and trying to gang against the consumer. And the consumer has become the most silent person. Meanwhile, these chambers, individually, they are all consumers. And so they have contributed to the high cost of doing business in Ghana. And I think that as a government, I'm happy that this administration has prioritized the consumer protection and the competition law as a way of dismantling the cartel regimes in this country. Until we do that, price of goods and services will be very expensive. Let me give you this example. In 2022, when the cedi, towards the latter part of the year, when the cedi was trying to gain its weight, Forest Bureau traders had a WhatsApp group, and they told their members on it that please don't sell, let's keep it because the cedi will fall again. So people are, so they are all scheming against Ghanaians. We have the chambers and all of them, and I think that.
Yeah. So you're saying that some of the private sector we fight for, they behave like cartels.
Yes.
And they become counterproductive. So whilst we are here shouting that we should buy made in Ghana, we should be competitive, they are, in fact, you're even suggesting they're economic saboteurs. That's what you're suggesting.
Yes. I mean, we've done a lot of studies back from 2014, and I tell you that this is one of the threats to the economic stability of this country. And I think our leaders have not seen it that much. If you want to be competitive, you need to ensure that prices are independent. Just 2 days ago, the communication minister talk of data tariffs.
Yeah.
And which for me, I think that in a well-functioning market, if the forces of demand and supply were working together, that would have resulted. Unfortunately, the telecom sector has become, there's a market failure in the telecom sector. So normal demand and supply will not be able to lead to any outcome. But I think that even in that sector too, we need to even address the structural issues within the telecom sector. Because what the minister addressed is the symptoms, but not the key issues in the telecom sector.
All right. Thank you very much. Push your hands together for him. We have a lot of people who want to comment, and if I miss you, my producer will let me know. I know Professor Ebo Texan is here. He taught me industrial economics. He also teaches international trade. I'll come to him. But let me stay on that table. COPEC and Borders Alliance, 2 quick comments. We know that to be competitive, cost of power must be low. And in Ghana right now, I think the second largest controversy is fuel and all the things around it. Just your quick thoughts around how can we make power competitive? Let me contextualize it. For most countries that industrialize, you buy power at less than 6 kilowatts per
6 cents.
6 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yes.
I think in Ghana, IPPs are selling power to sometimes 11, 12, 13. So if you want to crack industrialization, the cost of power must be at a certain rate. Correct? Now you are from the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. Just give us some quick thoughts around how do we in a long term bring the cost of power down to get more productive. Duncan.
Thank you, Bernard. Insightful conversation here. I think where Ghana misses our competitive advantage is where we miss Nkrumah's blueprints. He laid a foundation that we should simply have taken off from there, but individual political, factions will come with their own ideas and they derail that blueprint. Bernard, competitive advantage, from what I heard from your panel, is something we are lacking. And for me personally, my stomach churns every time we discuss power, we discuss energy issues, because we have a huge competitive advantage, yet we are the worst of. You recall in 2007, when we discovered oil commercial quantities, the thinking of most Ghanaians was that we're probably going to get some cheaper fuel, cheaper energy costs for the Ghanaian. Then we go to sign production agreements or whatever with the international oil companies that allows them absolute control of that resource. Bernard, if as a country with hydrocarbons, we cannot integrate the upstream, midstream, and downstream to give our people competitive advantage, then I don't know what we are doing. Because this is where it gets sickening. You produce all the hydrocarbons here. You allow the IOCs, international oil companies, to ship everything back to the UK, to Holland. They go and refine. Then midstream, we take 400 million USD every single month to go and import the
Finished
refined product back into the country.
Charlie.
Then we send the money back to those economies. So if eventually we are building their economies for them, but the raw produce sits with us. So I would be happy for a day to come when a leader comes and says, we're going to use GMPC, of course, as our national oil company, to spearhead an oil discovery. We're keeping that block. Whatever oil we get from that, we'll refine locally. Tour and build other refineries so that more people can get jobs to do. We'll refine our own oil locally. We'll be able to price locally. There was a time we were developing this thing called African Price Index, API. You have Brent, right? And then you have Platts. You have all the pricing, indicators across the world. Europe has one. Dubai, Asia has one. You go to the Americas, Brent is Europe. So, but we don't have WTI. We don't have one. So we cannot determine what it costs us to produce a barrel of oil across Africa. So cost of a barrel across Africa. We allow international companies to take out everything. Then we chase them with a dollar we don't have or we don't mint.
To buy the finished product.
To buy the finished product. Then we come back and now decide that the local currency is bad, so we should add more to it so that the people will pay more. Look,
Yeah.
I think we are just being wicked. And Bernard,
Yeah.
I think that for me personally, Sharia law or the Mosaic law must apply to our leadership.
That's where you are going.
It might sound extreme, Bernard, but you see, why China can be able to fight the global economic war with the West is because if somebody took $4,000, they will come after you.
Yeah.
But here, our leaders who decide on anything and they get away. Today, ECG is complaining they don't have money. But somebody imported containers, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. They didn't go to clear. They imported 1,000. They didn't go to clear. They were not tracking containers. 2,000 containers. Nobody clears. Nobody pays. Nobody is asked questions. 3,000 containers. Bernard. Then we wake up, we say, there's no money to pay for ECG and the mayor. So you and I should pay 1 Ghana cedi.
Okay.
It might be good for the government to be able to save the situation.
Yeah.
But the mess comes
Thank
from
you.
somewhere, and we don't leverage on our competitive advantage.
Wonderful. I like the breath. Put your hands together for him. This is very good. And I like the fact that the discussion started at a very high level, but we're bringing it home, right? So don't get flustered at all. This is all parts of trade, because you can discuss tariffs for all you want. If you can't refine your oil and bring prices down, what's the point? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 2 mini comments from 2 people in the trade sector. Just quick. So Ziad and then Asaki. Then I will come to the politicians who need Sharia law. I think there are 3 of them in the room. There's NDC and MPP in the room. So Ziad from Borderless Alliance, Awingobit from Import Export, and then I do politics. Then I try and come to a quick close. Borderless Alliance, what can you add to the discussion?
I will not go into the energy and ECG debate, and that is what I'm not going to do.
Okay.
If you said we had 2 minutes each, right? That's
Yeah.
too short. So I have to just fluff quickly into what I wanted to say. I want to go back to something you said about NTBs, and the discussion was scarce about NTBs. And this brings me to something that Mavis was talking about the political will. But she inadvertently talked about it. She was saying we need to convince Nigerians to allow the products coming from all over West Africa in. If she can do that and convince Nigerian authorities that they should allow goods coming from West Africa to enter their country unharassed, then she has already solved 80% of all of the problems across Africa. Because that is exactly what is taking place everywhere. Everybody just blocks the borders because they have protectionist, nationalist, political motivations, and nobody asks the questions of the collective will and the collective interest of the people. And so I think that is where we are lacking. I think the tariff is not the real issue. The tariffs is just a manifestation of the changing geopolitical world order. Yeah. And for a while, the geopolitical world order was not in the favor of Ghana or of Africa. Remember that in the 80s, in the wave of deindustrialization across Africa because of the structured adjustment progress, Africa seemed destined to become the producer of raw material for the world and the consumer of finished products. And that is the mentality that we need to shift now that we have received our latest wake-up call. America decides to wake up. They say, it's my country. You have to pay 10% all the way to 80% to access. But that's not the problem, because what does Ghana export to the U.S.? If you look at the GSS Trade Report 2024, the whole North Africa export from Ghana is 5.8%. Of our exports, and the whole import is 7.1%. So if you put 10% for Ghana on 5.8%, it's almost negligible. But it's the manifestation of the alliance and the partnerships, and that is what we have to look at, and we have to look for not just diversification of our economies, but also of our partnerships. If we don't do that one, then we will get stuck in the mud. Wonderful. And to do that one, my final thought, when you bring me back to the fact that there are things that are happening that can help. AFCFTA might not be a magic wand, but it's supposed to accelerate and to catalyze our industrial development. Wonderful. Our industrial policy in Ghana dates from before 2010, the trade policy the same. We have to update that
Yep.
before we start to say that this is what the framework is. And then we don't necessarily have to reproduce the way Singapore and the others have developed. But we have to frog leap somehow.
Yes, please.
You spoke earlier about the diaspora. And some idea hit me when we were talking about the remittances. I was like, can DBG find a way to help set up a financial institution or body in the US to collect diaspora bonds and to help transform this money and to channel it to Ghana as development funds to escape that 5%? Because 5% is very high.
Yeah.
How much will your transaction cost be on that money? 2%, 2.5%? You've already slashed it by half. So that's my idea, my aquaba to my brother.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Put your hands together. Let me take a wingo bit quickly. And this is still our discourse on the tariff situation globally, City Business Forum, as part of the City Business Festival. Awingo bit, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Bernard. I must say this is one of the productive days we have spent in Aliza Hotel here. I must comment City FM, City and Channel 1 for organizing this forum. What I did not see is that our ministries is not here. Ministry of Trade and Industry and Agribusiness is not here. Even though this is all over the country, they're probably listening, but I suggest in the near future we need to have them here.
Yes.
Especially they are the policymakers and then the implementers as well to be here. Without much ado, let me say that when I sat through and listened to the presentations from Michael to all of them, what I would say is that if by September 2025 and AGUA is gone, what next? Where do we go from here? All of us should be a concern to us. I want to say, you made it clear in your intro that 54 countries, African countries, signed and about 30-something,
now 47 have ratified.
Have rectified. I can tell you, it is on paper that they are rectified, but when you go to their custom operations, some of these countries have not deposited their instrument to work. And that exercise was done and played when the first cosmetic company in Ghana and the first beverage Casapreco shipped their goods to South Africa, where we even have the current general secretary, the Secretary General is coming from South Africa. When they got there, I can tell you the challenges that they went through.
Okay.
And so I would say, but it's good that we've started. The most important intriguing problem that I do see here is that we have to trade among ourselves, the 54. That's not 2 ways. But how do we trade? As we speak, African Union, we do not have, one single vessel. We do not have our coastal area lines. That will say that, okay, let's move our goods to trade among ourselves. We are going to give it to the foreign vessel, Bernard, to take it back to Europe before it then come back to whether Kenya or South Africa to drop the cargo. It's going to be very expensive. We cannot boast of cargo plane that we can take it, goods from here, Ghana, straight to Kenya or straight to South Africa. If it is perishable, just like Blue Skies is exporting every day to the United market, UK. By tomorrow morning, the product is there and it's in their shelf for us to consume fresh. So these are some of the things that we have to think.
That's what we focus.
Come again. Yes.
So that's what we should focus on.
Absolutely. We have to focus on. The other aspect is, I agree with Michael. You did a presentation yesterday at Horticulture Expo. And today you did a very fantastic presentation, very provoking. What I will want to say is that, yes, it is true that the Asians went together to negotiate with Trump. You know, the figures that Trump started with China, about 125 or so. They also went with 100 and something. He came to 30%. They say, okay, 34%.
Okay.
But we are going there individually. What can we go and do? We have to go in the name of African Union.
Wonderful.
And if you go in the name of African Union and they refuse, we must come back and look for different market. And I saw that he talked of whether if you don't have a strategy, you have to go with someone's strategy.
Yeah.
We can go beyond China. We can go to the other Asian countries.
Okay.
The Middle East. We need to look for new emerging market for our product.
Right.
The one that kills us, especially as a country, in the name of African Continental Free Trade, Bernard, you have been being on air every day. Can you tell me, in Ghana here, what are our products that if you go to my region, Upper East region, I will say because of what African Continental Free Trade, the government has made a deliberate policy for us to grow tomatoes more, for us to do ginger more, for us to do any crop or production that if you go to, we take the regions, the 16 regions, we'll be able to say that because of African Continental Free Trade, when you need this product, go to this region.
Thank you
they
very much.
are viable, like the Chinese, that's it in their province. Each province has a very strategic commodity or product that they produce. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Asaki. Now, it's a few minutes to 12. So, I am trying very hard to arrive at some sort of solution. So, I appreciate that you all have different angles of the problem you want to highlight. But help me to get to that. All right. So, the panel gave me about 6 areas we should go to. People are speaking about finance, skills, productivity, energy sector issues. So, please help me so that we don't just talk and go home. All right. So I just want to take 2 comments from the politicians. If you don't have anything to say, it's not a problem. It's not by force, right? Because the way the guys have set you up, if you talk, they may even fight you. Like the way somebody wants to do Sharia law against you. So Haruna, if you just want to say, hello, I'm Haruna from MPP. We've had, and I will discuss it at our national meeting. I will be happy. You understand? You don't have to say anything if you don't feel like saying. But if you have something to add, please add it. Deputy General Secretary of MPP. Haruna.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Politicians are not just born politicians. They are technocrats who have moved to become politicians. So besides politics, we have our line of business.
Yeah.
And we do carry them out and ensure that we work through what we put through to be able to contribute to our culture, to nation building. I've sat through here. I've listened to a couple of presentations and opinions that have been expressed with regards to this particular sector. And I'm happy to say that I've worked within the Ministry of Trade for 12 years.
Is it?
Yes. And was Dr. Spio Gabra has worked through the place. I worked in an agency, the National Board for Small-Scale Industries, where I represented Ghana in 2 different countries to discuss some of these particular activities. And I'm very proud to indicate that per the solutions that are being outlined here, one of it is trade intelligence, that we need to be able to start thinking about our trade intelligence as to how to be able to deal with this particular tariffs, the global tariffs. And also the other aspect is diversification. And you did indicate that we should be looking at some specific areas, and you have put 8 areas across. We're trying to look at how to be able to narrow it down to sectors that we are able to deal with. I am of the view that we should regionalize the trade sectors so that at least we'll be able to have comparative advantage, so that regions that are very good in certain areas can be given the advantage to be able to produce, so that when you go to the north, this is what you'll be able to get through. For example, I've always proffered solutions or suggest that if you can look at the share industry, how to can the share oil, because the share oil is something that is very important. And one of the panelists have mentioned about anywhere you go, the share oil from Ghana, and it's something that people are so much interested in. I've seen that in India, I've seen that in Japan, and other couple of places that we've gone, that we have been involved in this Kaizen activity, which is Kai means change, and Zen, change, and then Zen means for better. It is something that all of us should look at, so that we can group the country in terms of regions. You put 3 or 2 or 4 together to be able to centralize on one aspect, so that these activities that we are going to do be able to contribute to nation building.
Thank you.
I think that this is the area that I want to contribute to, and also thank Citi for coming up with this particular activity.
Thank you, Haruna.
Other politicians will look at how.
So
how to harness it.
Trade, intelligence, diversification are your two anchor points. So this is what I'm going to do. The MP, you are the chairman of the committee on trade, industry, tourism, and something else. So do you engage with the ministry? I think the minister is in US already.
Yeah.
And I think contrary to the advice of those here, basically they're saying we should have gone together, but she's there alone. I saw her shaking some man's hand. So my question to you as a head of that committee is, what is your locus? Are you able to influence policy, or are you more in assurance so that you check what they do? Do you understand my point? Because it's quite an important committee.
Yeah.
So just talk me through what the committee does and how you can help.
We do both. Let me tell you, some few days ago, we invited the trade unions,
okay,
the trade associations. Anytime at all there is currency depreciation, they go very fast to make sure that they increase their prices. But anytime at all there is currency appreciation, which is not common, they remain like that. They don't reduce their prices. So this time around, the committee called them to come and tell the committee why there is currency appreciation and they will not do anything to reduce prices. In fact, they told their stories, and to a large extent, we understood them. They indicated that currency depreciation against the major trading currencies is only one aspect or only one factor that influences prices. But there are other sufficient factors that influence prices. So the mere fact that currency has appreciated against the major trading currencies doesn't mean that prices should automatically go down. That was what they said, and I think it was clear. Let me tell you that I'm happy City FM and City TV has gone ahead to organize this kind of forum. All that I have listened to here, seriously, I am touched. Having listened to Business Solomon's live, Dr. Ekospio Gabra, Michael and others, our sister Mavis, I know that we have the brains. But the issue has to do with, why have you not been putting all these brains together all these whiles? That is the question that occurred to me. We happen to be lawmakers. But all that you have said here, I feel that you can do all the nice things. If the law environment doesn't help, all that we've done will be useless. Why? Because you said you went to Togo, you face some difficulties.
Yeah.
Women go to Togo to buy goods. We say, oh, well, because of ECOWAS, we have free trade. For that matter, free movements of goods and people. But do you go to Togo to buy goods and they are free? No. They are harassed all the time. So how do we make all these laws work? We must be seen to be making laws that create congenial atmosphere for businesses to thrive. We must be seen to make laws that ensure that there is indeed true movement of goods and services. We must make laws to back whatever agreements that we are entering into. So our lawmaking is very, very important. And at the end of it all, we'll do all this, we'll get the revenue, we'll increase production, we'll get competitive goods, we'll get the revenue, we'll create jobs. But if we don't strengthen our laws as far as corruption is concerned, everything, whatever gains we make, will be eroded. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So that was Alexander Roosevelt Hotoji, Chairman for Trade, Industry and Tourism Committee. I'd like to say that when I went to Togo, the immigration had a joint border operation. So I don't want to slander the border I used, the Ghana and the Togo people were working together. It was the customs part that I couldn't figure out, but I wasn't going there to trade. So it was actually very easy to go, because when I got to the border, the Ghanaian and the Togolese were in the same booth, collecting the same information, so it was much easier. In the past, I would have to finish Ghana and finish Togo. So some things are working, all right? We need to appreciate where we've come from so that it doesn't look as if. So there's a joint border at Akanu, which has a working thing, is the customs. Let me end with the Vice President's economic advisor. So these days, the Vice President's office is a very important office. And you are the economic advisor to the Vice President. So you are possibly the second highest government official here, or not the first. So tell us something. What are you going to tell your boss when you go back?
You know, I'll tell her Duncan is issued a fatwa on politicians. Right? Okay, so this is how you look at it. I think that we've had varied perspectives as far as trade is concerned. But timing is very important. I mean, as I listen to the panel, the fancy names, AFTA, AFTA, Afri-Exim Bank, and what have you. I mean, if you look at our Afri-Exim today, just a few days ago, it was downgraded to a junk status. If it's not doing very well at all. So if he stands up to speak, where would his voice go? So again, timing, very important. You look at what's happening with AFTA and all of that. So, I mean, I think Michael spoke about the informal economy and local economy and what we could do. Anecdotally, there are big anecdotes we could harness around the room and see how we could, champion this. I speak to individuals who tell me, look, if you're able to bring 12,500 metric tons of rice, I'll get them into the Sahelian region and get my commission. This is massive trade. We're talking 12,500 metric tons of rice coming in. How is it going through the formal trade channels? How are we harnessing this? So what it tells us is that there's greater potential. It's about how we harness it. We talk about share every day. Share is still grown in the wild. It's collected in the wild. What have we done in the last 30 to 40 years? Where are we with that? You traveled across the continent, even with the existence of AFTA, right? Then you get to Kenya. There's a queue for COMESA. There's a queue for other African nationals. Where's the integration? You arrive in Kotoka, there's a queue for ECOWAS, and there's a queue for other nationals. Where's the integration? And we're talking AFTA. So there's so much work to be done with all of these fancy names in terms of connecting the realities and the tangibilities and practicalities of it. And without it, we'll still be in.
So what will you tell your boss to prioritize?
And I cannot conclude as a government official without talking about the 24-hour economy.
Correct.
Right, because that's somehow, somewhat, if we manage to pull it through, would be a bigger solution here. I mean, most people always talk about the fact that they probably don't have, or they don't see the essence of it, wanting to see maybe brick and mortar to say this is the 24-hour economy. I give classic example. Airport Shell, it runs 24/7. If I'm in town and I want fuel, that's where I drive to late night or after midnight. Now, if there's a government policy that says, Duncan, and that's going to answer your integrated value chain question. If there's a government policy that says that after midnight, we're recalibrating all pumps, right, and putting X incentive or 0.5% of incentive on the pump that's going to go to fuel stations operating after midnight to be part of the 24-hour economy. It's just not going to board the economy. It's not going to be employment among other issues. There is so much to be done.
Elaborate on something for me. The president announced that from 1st July, the two major ports will operate as 24-hour economy hubs. And then he also added accelerated export development to 24-hour economy. What's the relation between 24-hour economy and export development?
Well, it's the same thing. It's just that you're trying to give key indicators of what is going to happen on the accelerated side of things and having clear linkages to import and exports to make clarity as to what government is driving as far as policy is concerned. So there's so much to be done. There's no color to this. Trade is trade. I mean, all of these tariffs we've seen happening, we're not really a part of it. It's been written on the wall a very long time ago that, look, we were not the focus of this. It's a wake-up call to all of us. I keep saying when USAID left, I said, look, they started telling us this by reducing aid budgets. Right? It happened with DFID, it happened with USAID, and JICA is only jacking up all of it because of military. among other issues. So we've been told that the door has been shut a very long time ago. It's about what we can practically do among ourselves.
Wonderful.
So it's about time we pull all the synergies
Finally,
together.
when you go, I'd like you to remind the president that the National Economic Dialogue report that was submitted, we want to see it. Because I think the first week of March, the whole country came together to craft a national economic strategy.
It's really out there.
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, I'll send you a copy.
Okay, I didn't see it.
I'll send you a copy.
Yes,
I've got one in my car before I leave.
How many people have seen it, the report? Okay, you alone.
Yeah.
So we want a copy.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, I'm not, look, I don't have any problem. Imagine if I read that report before coming here today. I would have saved us a lot of problems. I would have just said, this is the government's priority. Because I was the moderator of that event. But I haven't seen the report. So it's out.
I've got one in my car. I'll give it to you before
you can even send a digital copy.
Yes.
Before we end.
Okay.
I'd like to invite.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's put hands together for him. Thank you very much. Prof. Ebo Texan, just 2 quick comments from you in summary. I can see a hand. I really want to close, but I see a hand at the back, so I'll come to you. Yes. Just quick thoughts from you. You taught me in industrial econs, and I got an A 20 years ago.
I walked in late, so I was not part of the discussion that took on.
Okay. But you don't have anything to say?
Listening to what I came to meet, I think that the discussions that have gone on so far tells that we know what we have to do.
Yep.
I mean, definitely. It's always a political will to carry out some of these very difficult decisions that we have to make. But I think that the bigger picture is how to build a very stable economy that has the resilience to withstand the shocks that hit us from external sources. Because if businessmen would reduce their price, they need to be assured that the gains that they are seeing are going to be there for some time, so that it doesn't reduce its price and the next moment the city is depreciating again. So economic resilience is key to all of these, because apart from that, the environment that our businessmen do business in is not very conducive and competitive. And I'm sure Mavis would have mentioned some of them. And I think that the focus of policy is how to support our businesses to reduce their cost of doing business in this country, especially with regards to government regulation and the cost that comes with it. Then also the utilities that we spoke about. I mean, we need to give our businessmen some incentive to sell electricity to them at a cheaper rate, so that they can generate more jobs out of that, instead of having to rather subsidize the consumers and not support the businesses. So that is also very important. And then we don't need to get worried about these tariff issues that are going on. Our concern should be how China is going to respond, because much of our trade takes place with the Far East.
Yep.
We started reducing our trade with the US and Canada a long time ago. I mean, like the gentleman just said, it's just about 7 to 5%. We shouldn't worry about that.
Okay.
Our focus is how China will respond. If China is able to win that war, that is good for us, because we do more trade with the Far East.
Yep.
And then within Africa. So the AFTA is definitely an area that we need to take a look at.
Okay.
That is the only way we can support our SMEs to export, because the standards in Africa are relatively much lower than elsewhere.
Okay.
And so meeting those standards will not come at a huge cost to our SMEs, and they can use the African sub-region as a market for their,
Wonderful.
especially in ECOWAS. So, I mean, I think that the discussions so far that I've heard.
I want to just corroborate what you said. I just got a notice from Business Insider Africa, a story published 11th June, which is yesterday. China to offer zero tariff access to 53 African countries, excluding Eswatini. And the story says China has announced plans to offer zero tariff treatment to all 53 African countries with which it maintains diplomatic ties. So I think you're right.
I mean, so we should focus on that.
And I think your last slide was quite instructive there. There was a hand at the back. I hope you are not going to ask any new question, that you're going to conclude for us, because I really want to close. So just give him the mic to share his views. Then I'll come to the panel. Okay, oh gosh. I really want to close. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Pacho make a tree because I can afford a dorsal.
Yati.
Yo, Yadamasi, City FM, near my ye, and no the mama industry, etimia konen me. Near the person be do to Johnny say, ye Timmy, higher industries, maybe a two coin, I call some of the exhibitions be a Yayo Asia and Far Asia, Ninano. And near maybe I expect to say, Bianca, Ministry of Trade, or maybe Buku Mama Yeno, Sanya Mana Emba, because so Ushema, me call IFES, that was 2022. The government of India, as a example, Amema, was setting exhibition center almost about 200 acres for every institution, Biara, who year production, come and do exhibition over there every year. And you know, a lot of people from Africa and then to exhibition and see what is going on, and then they will also come and implement it in their country. Yahana, what was the last time I buy a paved way say yenye sa exhibition ibi? Yenye bida. Ne better yet me akwenim. Even though grand waiting me akona wabano, getting the raw material, no, you looking for a letter of credit from the bank. None of banks are a work country ni beti me amayebi. Ne say the dealer okwe ni nyina be waste. A better yet me create improvement. I'm a union ma omusunya adwuma. All right. Etumisremo say e ba say bankers no ne Exim Bank ni won ma ba ni nyina wo mo ba ha na so betra na mo kasa bia ya support me. I quite remember say I'm from BBS Embassy, BBS Pharmacy. I'm the CEO. Who the letter they will ask you, do you have appointment? If you don't have appointment, they turn you out, which is not fine. It is part of blockade. Broke the grown up. Ye person ye move ko yenim. It mum be kwamaya employment ye be create. We have the men to work. We are not lazy people here. We are more than them. It is ramo. Mum bomodi say mu be bie kwamaya. Now you open your doors. Na muntie sebe ye nkwasi asem ye de beba no. Na munwe hu adwuma. E bia na bi wo kra na nyansasem ba ko wom. Ah obetimi dia ye adwuma.
Yes, you are saying. So, what can you say? Luckily, this program is streaming. We are sure the ministry is listening, and there are government officials here. So, thank you for that contribution. I noticed I didn't open the floor, so let me open the floor for a few comments. It's fair. So, BPS Pharmacy, thank you. He basically says that the government needs to facilitate certain things for them. He speaks about exhibitions that other countries do, and that our governments should create such opportunities, and also are receptive to the private sector in terms of giving them access to credit. So thank you. Yes, sir. So I see a few hands. I'll take some comments. So where's the mic? No, I need to call you first. So give the mic to him at least, so that we have a way of going. So give it to this man. You have to catch the eye of the speaker. It's very important. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Very good discussion. But one thing that I haven't heard in all this is... my name is Patrick Apoya. Oh, Patrick. Yes. I'm here in two caps. Okay. Skyfox Limited. And I'm also supporting... the man you said you like him very much.
Yes. So import, export.
All right. So PNC will also talk there here.
Okay.
One thing I have not come out, and the closest I got was from here.
Yeah.
We are just assuming that before the tariffs, the trade regime was already favorable to us, and somebody is now muddying the waters. But that is not the case. We've all been witnesses to the fights and the struggles of civil society on the unjust trade systems, heavy subsidies that developed countries are putting into their exporters, and that will even come to Ghana's market and still be cheaper than what we produce here. And you would wonder how somebody can bring chicken, beef to be cheaper than what we have here, and yet we didn't have the courage to impose taxes that WTO itself allowed. That if it is to correct certain things that will protect your industries, you are allowed to impose. How many times have our ministers attempted to impose tariffs on rice, on chicken. And we had to chicken out immediately because somebody will get up and shout you down. Okay? I mean, America was the last country that everybody thought would get up and start a trade war like this. But where is Africa? Instead of them to take the opportunity and correct some of the imbalances that they couldn't do it on their own, we are rather saying, oh, Trump is starting a trade war. Are we not now taking the opportunity that now that WTO is disabled, we can impose all the things that we have been trying to impose that we never got a chance? Chicken should never be allowed to trade the way it is being traded. That's one front I want to alert all of us here, that there's more that Africa can do, take opportunity than what we are doing currently. The second one is, if you are talking about competitiveness in terms of pricing, don't just look at only the tariff now. The appreciation of the cedi is very good for Ghana, but it is very bad for export. Now, if you take the effect of export, that I now need to increase the price when I go to Europe so that I can have my cedi value. In addition to that 10% or 15% that is coming on top, that is huge. Nobody should write off that. How do we protect our exporters? Is it time that your D-levy, that you call D-levy, should we cut it into half? Half will go to support every export. Once you export, one cedi goes to, just like the example that my brother cited on the Shell operating after midnight. We need to begin to think some things like this to protect our exporters. Thank you very much. But the last thing that I would like to also add is, for financing to be broken to the SME level, forget about the current financial system in Ghana. Banks are hopeless when it comes to breaking that loss. Let's look at another financing mechanism, because the biggest barrier between me and the money that is sitting in ABSA is collateral security. They cannot compromise on that. I also don't have it. So we'll just be running in circles, in circles, in circles. DBG, I think you have an instrument through GESAL that does collateral something.
The way you are coming to the front.
It is so far the best intervention that will help SMEs. So look at the GESAL approach, how they support SMEs, and I think we will get out of this
Wonderful,
process.
Patrick.
Thank you very much.
Let's go to the back. Patrick Apoya. He's a comrade in the struggle. So go to that side, yes. The back. The gentleman, yes. That side. Thank you, sir.
Okay, please. Thank you for this opportunity. And I respect everyone here, especially from my father, I see Ekos Progabara and the others. Please, there is a problem on this continent. And there are three factors. The first factor is slavery. And then comes to mentality. And then comes to economy. Now, how do I break it down? When we were enslaved, we were given independence. Because our level of enslavement, but the mentality was still in us. Before there were skyscrapers, there were pyramids. Before Oxford, there was Sankore University. What were in the minds of the people that they created this? Even though there was no Western civilization. Let's look at economy. We were the ones that first brought money into the world. What was the man that were able to create currency from this continent? So today here we are, discussing about how are we going to better our industries. Let's not forget that Africa was broken into boundaries. So that breaking from the top has come to affect you and I today. That we cannot develop our own countries and a continent. Whatever the economy will go, if we are not able to break away from these Western enemies, we can never grow.
Thank you.
Never. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I'm told there are some associations. So is it peasant farmers?
Bernard, no, this is from the People's National Convention, PNC.
Oh, Lord.
Yes. Bernard, you asked if we have nothing to say at all. Let's just say hi. Okay. So I just want to put this across. My name is Mark Eusiakon.
PNC, go ahead.
Yes, I'm the National Youth Organizer for the party. Bernard, I think that as a state, we need drastic measures to mitigate some of our challenges. These are issues we've discussed over and over. I'm sure by then I wasn't born. Yeah. But at about the age of 40, it's as if we are still discussing these same issues over and over. And I heard Dr. Spio talking about some infrastructure that the Nkrumah administration built. For instance, the Black Star Line, the railways. So if after several years we are here to talk about the good things they did in the past and today they are no more, then I ask myself, where are we going to? If we clearly look at the directive principle of state policy, which is a guideline to state objectives and responsibilities, it includes promotion of social and economic development, which government upon government after Nkrumah's regime have failed. There is one thing, if we admit that we have failed, then we'll definitely have a way to come out with a solution. We are to, as part of these things we are discussing, the global tariffs, from Dr. Spiel, we contribute about just 2% to the global trade when it comes to export and the financial engineering. Just 2%. So we ask that. But as a country, we just asked that can we identify just 2 or 1 thing that we can major or master in? And we're mentioning a lot of things. Like the jewelry, like the share nuts. Let me share just a simple experience with share nuts. I've had an opportunity to supply share nuts to a company in Tema called Woma Ghana. Woma Ghana produces fried oil. Now, if you look at the share nuts, there are about 8 products that is derived from share nuts. The only thing Woma use for their oil is the share oil. But the shea butter, it is used for soap, for cosmetics, and all other products that we can talk of.
All right.
Now, if you go to Burkina, they have a lot of shea nuts. The Burkina president have come out with some measures that no one can sneak shea nuts from Burkina to Ghana. And so, Woma Ghana is not able to buy shea nuts from Burkina. Rather, the young man have asked them to come and build a plant there. So Woma Ghana has a plant in Burkina. And when they go through the byproduct of the shea nut, the young man have asked them to just use the shea oil. But the other byproduct, which is the 7 byproducts, he wants them because he's going to establish other companies and create jobs for his boys. But in Ghana, we sell the shea nuts to the company, they extract the oil, and export all the other 7 byproducts to their countries, to add values to it. So the question is, why are we still where we are? The answer is very simple. We need drastic measures to make sure that we get solutions to our problems.
Sir.
Thank you.
There's a lady in front of you. Give the mic to her. I'll just take 3 more comments, then I'll wrap up. So the lady, and then 2 final comments. Then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. My name is Chea Akosua Presla from Sambus Geospatial Limited. There's something that I want to mention. That is that there's a huge gap in technology and industry. Why? So the gentleman mentioned that cocoa here in Ghana is much expensive than what is imported. It's because in our cocoa sector, we are not able to monitor our value chain. And once a country is not able to monitor their value chain, automatically there are huge costs. There's production costs, there's ordering costs, there's holding costs. And as a person, you want to make profit. So that is why most of the times our cocoas are expensive. And I'm sure most of us here are leaders. Let us try push technology in our workflow. Because in Ghana, you realize that the issue starts with leadership. If we are going to go forward, after all we have discussed, it's leadership. So in our very own small way, even though we are not direct in the macroeconomy, in the microeconomy, in our local organizations, let us try push technology. And that is one of the things that we are doing. We are starting with the schools, the students, then we move to industry. So please, let us push technology in wherever we find ourselves. Thank you very much, Bernard.
Thank you very much. And then the final 2, they're just the 2 people who have raised their hand, and then we wrap up. I'll come to Dr. Spiel-Gabra to close us. So you will give me closing remarks. So please be thinking about what you say. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Hassan Sharif Dean. I'm wearing 2 caps. I'm coming from real estate, and suffice to say that I'm an advocate for Islamic finance. I think at the bedrock of some of the conversations we're having is access to funding. And with Prof. Sharif here, I think my humble appeal is to you. Please take this up. I think it's long overdue. Islamic financing must be regulated and it must happen anytime soon. Sukuk is doing wonderful in Nigeria, and they are using it for infrastructure. What are we doing? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And where's the last one? Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Agbamwa Aheto is my name. I'm a Reverend Minister.
Okay.
I'm here on two notes. CEO of Achievers Business Consult is a capacity building workshop, and then Achievers International Award. We identify such people as your panel who are affecting lives and try to celebrate them like yourself. What I want to say is that when we listen to our rich resource persons and the good work Bernard, City FM, you are doing, that's the only radio station I listen to in a way. I want to say that the issue about mindset, Nkrumah made a point that Africa is not poor, it's Africans who are poor. The first time I read that statement in secondary school, it changed my mind. It means we have what it takes to be, but it is ourselves who is not. I have an appeal or a suggestion I want to put to the panel, and for that matter, government, once this program is going viral, that right from school, from preschool, GSS, before coming to SS, you realize that the whole program in SS, there is no intentional move to make you think of what you can do for your nation. It's all about you finish school and then you'll be employed and you work. And so I want such, if you have an encounter with the panel you're having, Bernard, yourself, like government have structured a system whereby all public schools, like it's a part of the curriculum or it's an arrangement that once a while, industry gurus or achievers come and encounter the people and explain to them and psych their minds about what they can create for nation and what they can do for nation. Then you realize that we'll be diverting attention from this thing whereby you have an association called a Graduate Unemployed Association. I think it was something like that. And so when I saw it, I was like, wow. So right up to university level,
right,
the mindset we are talking about is from childhood. Even in the house, the children are looking up to the father and the mother as the only one who can provide. At a stage, the children should be trained to know that you exist to change your world. Not only for your world, to change you. That's the impact I want to be.
Put your hands together for everybody. I mean, I've never been at a program where there's been so much engagement, so much interest, so much energy. So please, one more time, let's give ourselves a massive round of applause. And, you know, I was trying to summarize the program, but even for a skilled moderator, like, there's just two things. So the truth is that we'll go and watch the program again, and maybe later on TV we'll give you some summaries, but there's been a lot that has been said. I think for me, the main issue is we need to act fast and act collectively. And we've also identified things to do in finance, sectors to focus on, and indeed mindsets and attitudes to change. So I'm going to ask Dr. Spiogabra, because you wear so many hats, to just give me your takeaways, right? You wear the former ambassador to US hat, former minister of many things hat, AFDB hat, ABCDE hat. So just give me your 2-3 closing thoughts that you want to go home with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Bernard, for this session, this event. And actually, I find it remarkable that for somebody who has been on the forefront of journalism in Ghana, broadcast journalism, that if you say this is one of the, to make sure I quote you correctly, that this is one of the most informative or the best sessions that you have either moderated or whatever. I think that's saying quite a lot about this session, because you have had opportunities both in Ghana and outside to moderate a whole lot of panels, and also your own television program is one that we often all see and view and appreciate. So I think it's a comment on you, the participants and those online. So give yourselves a round of applause. And of course, Bernard as our host and our moderator. Again, if Bernard has escaped and has transferred to me the responsibility of summarizing the conversation, then that tells you also how difficult it is for anybody to attempt. A man got A in an examination recently, and his professor is here, but he's avoiding the summary part of the of the program. Thank you for that honor. And I'll start with the last speaker who mentioned the mindset change, which also reflects what our colleague here said in the course of the program. And I agree that everything begins in the mind. So I must confess also that when you mentioned the name ABCD, the way I have tried for more than 13 years to contribute to the change of mindset is through the Africa Business Center for Developing Education, ABCDE, an NGO that does a lot of things like this, but at the secondary and tertiary level, to inculcate different mindsets into our youth. Kwame Nkrumah again tried that through the Young Pioneers movement, and I happily have to also accept that I was a member of the Young Pioneers movement 60-something years ago. And that the principles that we learned then are still applicable today. I won't get into that for this event. We'll have another session with, hopefully, young pioneers who are listening to my voice. Try and contact me and let's get the show rolling. But during this panel, as I said, we've heard, taken a cue from the United States and the actions that its president has taken, which affects the whole global economy. Actually, what he has done actually is long-term beneficial to Africa because he has raised our anxiety levels. He has also angered his own allies, especially the European allies that would normally have been pro-America on this matter, and gotten them also to look out for themselves and begin to strategize differently. He's actually told the Asian people, the Chinese, who he's targeting with bilateral actions. In fact, yesterday there was a conclusion of some preliminary US-China negotiations in London and elsewhere where they claim they are getting close to various agreements. But again, he has shown that his interest is in rare earth minerals, even just doing that one. Then in the Ukraine war too, we also found out the US's main interest is rare earth minerals. Now, rare earth minerals are also a lot of the advantages that Africa has, and where we may not know all the rare earth minerals that we have, but the ones that we know that we have, and I have pointed out one, which based on world trade practices and the pricing of commodities has shown itself, gold, as the most reliable export product that any country can have. That's why Ghana was called the Gold Coast by the British when we were a colony for more than 300 years. This country was known as the Gold Coast. Now, if you are the Gold Coast and you happen to have gold, gold happens to also be your largest export. And over 1 or 2 million people apparently are in the so-called galamsey or gold trade. And you want to get them out of it. What is the most natural thing for them to be doing? I would suggest respectfully that it would be to ask them to stay within the gold trade, but not as galamseyers, but now value addition people. Get them trained. 1 million people can be trained in jewelry making. And I'm sure within less than 3 to 6 months, most of them can pass out at different levels of proficiency and begin some, gold making under the regulation of the gold board, which we have. So that's just one idea that I think can be further explored going forward. But all the other ideas about cashew and cocoa, chocolate as well, obviously, and I agree, only 50% of our cocoa exports or cocoa production, which actually is much lower than it should be. We hit 1 million tons at one time a few years ago. We are now down to 500, 600,000. There are many reasons for that. But again, if that also, I was just talking to somebody and we said that all of us who went to school, any kind of school, graduated, at least I did, without one single lesson, a whole 1 hour lesson on how to convert cocoa beans to chocolate. Now, I don't know whether anybody here had in his secondary school education a 1 hour lecture on this obviously simple subject. And that tells you that is not part of our mindset. Nor did we have the lecture also about how to convert your rocks samples into gold. So these are lectures that must take place in our educational system, going down, which is supporting the comment that was made there and some of the comments that have come from here. But on the broader issue of continental action, that again was one of the things that some of us spoke about, that everything we are doing here, we shouldn't be thinking about Ghana alone, because our next door neighbors are part of ECOWAS. So there's a collective, objective that we've had for 34 years and which has not fully been realized. Then there's also the continental aspect, the AUC and all these continental bodies. In this conversation, we've also mentioned the need for other Pan-African institutions, the Remittances, in Africa Remittance Organization, African Railways Organization, African Shipping Lines, which can help the import-export trade. So let's continue with that Africanization of our thoughts so that we can't have just balkanized thinking that in Ghana we've changed our minds, but Ivorians haven't changed their minds. So you can't then go together. Or Ghana has changed its mind. The mindset change I'm talking about, but East Africans haven't changed their minds. We need a collective change of minds along Pan-African levels, using Pan-African institutions who must also then invest in this change of mind process. African Development Bank should be able to invest $1 million or more into the process of changing African minds. African Export-Import Bank, bankrupt or not, however rated they are, should be able to invest X amount of money. Now our CBGs and DBGs and all these other local Ghanaian financial institutions and other financial institutions that are doing business in Ghana, high cost of capital, which was only mentioned slightly, is a major disincentive for any kind of investor or any entrepreneur or business. Because if you are going to borrow and you have to pay at least almost one third of your revenues or profits to your financier, what's the incentive when you have not mentioned your other expenditures, your staffing costs, your transportation costs, and all these other costs? So cost of capital is critical. And I also must mention that when I was Minister of Trade and Industry, I actually established a cost of capital committee in the Ministry of Trade and Industry. And the members, just for the sake of information, include the current governor of the Central Bank of Ghana, Dr. Isiama, the former faculty head of the University of Ghana in economics, Togwe Afede, Dr. Mensah, then the advisor in the Ministry of Finance. That's Dr. Quarty, is the one I'm Professor Quarty of the Ministry of the University of Ghana Faculty of Economics, is the one I'm referring to. So these were people that sat for 2 years and produced a whole lot of ideas which are still there, cabinet documents that I think can be retrieved, because after NDC lost power, many things went differently, I'll say wrong in my opinion, including the fact that the Ghana Trade Fair site, which had existed since Nkrumah's era, where people are saying they want to trade fairs and the Ghana should be able to have products that can be shown at trade fairs. Your trade fair site has been, apparently sold, cut up in pieces. So there's no one particular place that Ghana can demonstrate its export products to the rest of the world to come and buy. So that also must be dealt with under another program, oral or whatever. And because the lands actually have been allocated or stolen or whatever is happening to them, but some action needs to be taken to recover the Ghana Trade Fair land, because it's about trade and having areas where you can show your products, exhibit them, etc. Let me conclude on the fact that we've had a good session, we've had excellent moderation, a lot of ideas have come out, and as I think our moderator is saying, we really pray that you actually take time to do the editorial part and cut this up into digestible pieces, digestible portions, sound bites, 15-minute programs, 10-minute programs, for the rest of the year, depending on other programs that City will be producing. But I think this session and the ideas and suggestions that have come out of this must seep deep into the psyche of our people. And when it comes to mindset change, I'll give you the last example. Again, as Minister of Trade and Industry, I had the honor and the pleasure of creating a Made in Ghana committee. And that Made in Ghana committee is the one that created a logo. If you can all look at the bottles of water in front of you, if you look at it, you see a certain small logo on it that says Made in Ghana. The idea here, which is still the best idea, is that brands that are Ghanaian made should be identified in a certain manner so that our consumers can consciously prefer that brand, even if it's cost 2, 3, 4, 5 cedis or percentage more than something else. This is what China and the Asian countries actually did to change their economic activity. So there was one time when the Americans and the Japanese were having arguments over trade. And the Japanese said, look, you can bring all the American rice in particular to Japan, but we'll make sure that Japanese don't buy your rice. So America exported plenty of rice, and it sat on the docks of Yokohama for months and years, because the Japanese had determined that they like sticky rice. Japanese rice, because of the chopsticks, has to be sticky for you to eat it. The rice was exported all right. So this is a kind of a non-tariff barrier. You export your rice, but we refuse to buy it.
Wow.
And the Ghanaians can choose to consciously buy made in Ghana products. It was disbanded when another government came after the NDC government, and they disbanded the Made in Ghana committee. Meantime, the committee members were by professional groups. Charter Institute of Marketing Ghana, Institute of Public Relations Ghana, Association of Advertising Agencies in Ghana. They were all professionals who knew how to brand the products and sell them. Made in Ghana committee. There was also a Brand Ghana Council, of which I was also chairman. That was also, dismembered. And the Brand Ghana Council, again, was to allow us to identify this brand, which is the shea butter brand that Ghana is producing, that we like to champion, which is the furniture brand that Ghana is producing that we can champion, which is the coconut oil, all these products. Let us have our brands. Let us choose consciously to buy them. And you can see just that alone, mindset change. You can have a 5 to 10% change in your GDP and in your other economic variables after the cost of capital has also, respectfully for the bankers, come down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Put your hands together for Dr. Icos Biogabra. A couple of quick announcements before we go. We have a forum in a week's time, also strictly by invitation, on harnessing agribusiness potential for economic growth. So that's looking at the agribusiness and the export side. So it delves a bit deeper. And if you are interested, you can see Vivian. She's moderating that one in a week's time. Ahead of our 3-day Agri Fair. I don't know if you have the jingle here. JB, do you have the Agri Fair jingle? Yes, please give it some sound.
Calling all farmers, agribusinesses, and innovators. This is your chance to shine. Channel is your chance to shine. Channel 1 TV invites you to exhibit at Agri Fair 2025, one of Ghana's largest agriculture exhibitions. From Friday 20th to Sunday the 22nd of June, the A4 Sutherland Children's Park in Accra will come alive with the very best from Ghana's agribusiness sector. Are you a farmer with fresh produce of any kind? Be it crops, livestock or poultry, fisheries or aquaculture, or you're a supplier of agro inputs and processing machinery? This is your platform to connect with the world. Agri Fair 2025 is more than an exhibition. Showcase your fresh produce, share your expertise and experience, and grow your business. So, to all farmers with fresh produce, livestock or poultry, fisheries or aquaculture products, come, sell, network, and expand your business. Agri Fair 2025, where culture meets innovation. Register now to secure your spot. Call us on 0205-973-973. Come one, come all. Enjoy the freshest farm produce at unbeatable prices. And treat yourself to sizzling kebabs made from beef, mutton, pork, chicken, and more. Great taste, great value. Don't miss out. The Agri Fair 2025 is powered by Channel 1 TV with support from 97.3 City FM and is proudly sponsored by the Ghana Exim Bank, Legacy Crop Improvement Center, Development Bank Ghana, Agri Impact Limited, and the Horticulture Business Platform. Our technology partner is Farmerline.
This June, the business wave is back and it's bigger than ever. The City Business Festival 2025 on City FM and Channel 1 TV, where it's all about business. This June, we will be celebrating Ghanaian businesses, re-examining our business modules and practices through our business fora, and sharing knowledge through our on-air business discussions. Make a business date with the on-air series every weekday at 9 a.m. on the City Breakfast Show on 97.3 City FM and 10 a.m. on Breakfast Daily on Channel 1 TV. From expert interviews to real-world insights to the tools you need to grow. Don't miss a single moment this June. It's the City Business Festival 2025, celebrating everything business. Only on City FM and Channel 1 TV. Your business, your future, your time is now. Stay tuned, stay inspired, and let's grow together. The City Business Festival 2025, celebrating everything business.
The City Business Festival 2025 is powered by 97.3 City FM and Channel 1 TV, and it's proudly sponsored by Absa Bank, MTN Business, and Zondertech Ghana Limited.
Only in the talking business, we're in the doing business. And the issue of agric is not just information and finance, it's also markets. So for the 3-day event is an experiment for people to get closer to Ghanaian agri produce. So please join us for those 3 days. The last thing I'd like to remind you of is that we have a management boot camp that we do, which ends the business festival. It's an executive education program that we've curated with some of the best skilled business leaders, and it's focused on leadership, it's focused on organizational development, marketing, and the rest of it. Now, if you want to register your manager or decision maker, it's a high-level training program with limited seating. Call 024-201-424. We'll put the number and the artwork on the screen. It's a very powerful session we do from the 22nd to the 28th of June. It's at a location. It's a boot camp. Some of the insights we've harvested from our knowledge, we work with other business leaders, we bring to bear. So I'd like to say a big thank you first to the panel. Mavis also, Jenfi, put your hands together for Mavis. Thank you. When I called Mavis, she was not in Ghana. She came down purposely to be part of this. So Mavis, I really appreciate this. I really, really do. I'd like to also appreciate Emmanuel Mensah on 2 levels. This has been possible because APSA have sponsored it, and he's also put himself out there to be in a suit speaking as a bank for Patrick to be drawing close. I think Patrick wanted to give you a blow. But thank you so much, APSA and Emmanuel and the APSA team, for your constant support, because this idea, when it started, your support has made it work. So we really appreciate it. Put your hands together for APSA. I'd like to also thank Michael Koto. Michael is like our resident intellectual, because when we have any complex topic, we bring him. He makes it very easy. Michael, thank you for what you do. And don't give up. I'm older than you, and I've not given up. So I don't know your problem. Even Spio has not given up, and you want to give up. You are not serious. You have to stay and fight. Yeah. And of course, what can we say? Some people were, why didn't you invite the minister and all of those things? The ministers are there, they work and things, but sometimes you need people who have been there, done that. Look at the range he brought to the topic. You get it? So at this stage, he's a statesman, and whatever he says, if we take it, it helps us. If we decide not to take it, he will still die a happy man. So I feel he's condescended to come and spend time to share his experience. So we are really grateful to you, Dr. Kospio Gabra. Thank you so much. Special thank you to our sponsors, MTN Business. Where's the MTN team? Give me a wave, MTN. Are you here or you go home? Zonda Tech. Where's the Zonda Tech team? Thank you so much, Zonda, for the great work you are doing. And of course, APSA Bank. So next Thursday, we have another session, which is on the agribusiness. We have actually paid for the food, and we expect you to eat it. So don't be in a hurry to leave. Please help yourself to the rest of the food here. I don't understand sign language. What are you saying? The food is finished. When were you eating it? I don't even know. So when we were talking, they were eating. No, I didn't know. Everything is finished. Oh, wow. Oh, sometimes that's serious. I was timing some of the food. I didn't know. Anyway, we will play back the full show tonight at 9 p.m. But based on the advice of Doc as well, we'll share bite-sized pieces on both social media and our traditional media. So you hear yourself on TV, you see yourself on, you hear yourself on radio, and you see yourself on TV. So on behalf of the team, I'd like to say a big thank you to Vivian Kailoko and Yiram and Magdalene and JB and the team for working so hard for some of us to shine. So put your hands together for my team. Vivian, where are you? Yiram, where is Yiram? And Magdalene, Richard Mensah, Ni Ayi, Business Desk, head of Joseph Bernard Alote and the technical team, Director Victoria and Co. Where are you? Please put your hands together for my team. They've been fantastic. Really, really fantastic. So we'll see you next week. Let's take a nice group photo of those of us in the front. And then, where's the camera guy? And then we'll see you the rest of you soon. Have a good, is it good afternoon or good morning? Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye. Thank you. Wow.
are on. One, Mama long shot. Okay. One, you are on. Three, your camera is gone off. Two is on.
Poverty makes you do what you otherwise would not do. Wealth makes you live the way